Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Shireman the handoff to Alexander. On the way to the rim. He just bullied his way to the bucket. 2.9 before halftime. Bowen trying to lob it inside, taken away by Dotzler. Half-court heave off the back iron, and we're tied at 43 at halftime. Sanford broke down Shireman. That three wouldn't go. Got a good look. Ahead, Kalkbrenner running the floor. 8-point Blue Jay lead. Timeout, Iowa.
Samuel Tabe seeing his first action. Gets into the paint, has it knocked away and stolen. Right cell with a steal. Latrell on the drive himself, cut off. Out to Nelson, around to Sears. Catch and shoot. 3.
Rush side, RJ open for three. Fires right between the eyes from downtown. Oh, the pole movement. Another assist and another timeout called by the Panthers head coach.
25-24, A&M by a point. 4:25 to play. It's stripped at half court. Wade drive, lay it in. Wade with a steal and the score.
Three-pointer short from Justin Edwards.
Air ball.
They will yell air ball as McCullough feeds a rolling Adams at the rim for the alley-oop slam. Timeout called by John Calipari, and Kansas is back within 4.
I think naturally you have to, you can't play scared, you can't play stupid, but you can't play scared. I think we have to be, cognizant of who's out there and ask what we're asking them to do from a physical standpoint. Like, you can utilize quarterback run game and they can take care of themselves and slide and not take, big hits like Heinrich does sometimes, just trying to run through people. So I think you just, it's went from, hey, get as many yards as you can to possibly, if you can get down and take care of yourself.
Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers.
Hey, man.
We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill and live from the H&H Chevrolet studio. I call it a studio. Some people call it a stage.
It's not much of a studio.
I mean, it's actually an enormous studio if you think about it.
Maybe.
I mean, every other radio studio I've been in has basically been the size of Shane's box over there.
That's why I would consider that more of a studio than where we are.
See, we're in a huge...
We're in a space.
We're in a venue.
Live from
Shane
the
walking
H&H
in there?
Chevrolet space. Space-time continuum.
Well, we're all in the live from the space-time continuum.
But not everybody is in the H&H space-time
That's
continuum.
true. It seemed like Draymond Green and Rudy Gobert were maybe going into a different...
Draymond's in his own world. He's in his own universe. I think he's in a different galaxy. Draymond is always acted out. And I don't think he's human anymore.
I think this is the first headlock we've seen, though. I think that's the...
Well, what's worse? Punching your own teammate in practice, not just soft in the shoulder, but like going for the jaw.
Yeah.
Or putting an opponent in a headlock. Somebody he acted as if he was a hockey player in that moment.
Did. Which, I mean, is kind of his role. He is the goon. He's
to an extent, though. Still with the sport of basketball, there's a little.
It's a different deal.
The antics are a little lesser. Even in a moment where Clay gets tied up with McDaniels.
McDaniels.
And when they get tied up with one another, that's one thing. You can push and shove. Was there ever a headlock in the Malice at the Palace?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, that was more, though, because why? Well, fans and players were really getting into it.
Yes.
In a moment that is just everything's on the court, and the first thing you think about doing is putting a guy in a headlock. I know Rudy's big. And so, you're trying to figure out how to diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
But all you're doing by holding on to the headlock, which I think is the worst part about it.
Yeah, he didn't let go.
If you pull him aside and then you release your arm and you get him away and whatever, that's one thing. Dude's just holding on to him for dear life, as if he's trying to behead him.
So the funny thing was, obviously Clay and Jaden McDaniels got into it up the floor, but I think right before that, under the hoop, Draymond and Rudy had gotten into it, and these guys don't like each other anyway. There's just not a lot of love lost there.
Just those two guys?
Well,
those two are the only ones that
those two specifically don't like each other. I mean, a lot of people don't like Draymond, which is totally fine. Listen, and first of all, when the teammate is Jordan Poole, he deserved to get punched. So we're just that's. I'm not even kidding.
Okay, guy.
I'm not a Jordan Poole guy at all.
Oh, really?
Dude, you should see. Have you seen the photos of the way they're just staring at him after they won the title, and he's dancing with the trophy and stuff, and the rest of the team is kind of just looking at him like, who is this guy?
Well, he's their Jackson Mahomes.
He really kind of was. It's like we're embarrassed by this guy, but we're related to him, so I guess here we are. But no, I didn't actually mean to talk about Draymond this morning.
Well, it's on the TV.
Yeah, it's right in front of us, and they're showing a pretty aggressive replays of the headlock there. But we've got a great show for you here today. We've got, of course, our Wednesday regular Brian Christopherson coming up at 8:00. We are also going to talk to Kevin Sjuts at 8:30, and then wrap up the show with our very own Avarie Howard for the whole 9:00 hour. And I don't think she's listening yet, so I think we can say it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think she starts listening until like the back end of the 7 hour.
Yeah, so we purposely didn't play Shane's World on Monday.
I mean, you're like, what the stink?
That's what she's gonna say.
Because we wanted to play Shane's World with Avarie and make her suffer to the same extent that Andrew has with the jelly beans. Because I really haven't yet. I've only gotten one bad one. We've been playing this game for like a month.
Yeah. Well, and your bad one wasn't bad.
It wasn't that bad. I was like, I don't love it, and I spit it out.
And it was dead. Well, actually, no, your bad one was gross. You
love
didn't
it.
like it. Didn't affect you as much as I thought it would. But Avarie told us a story. This was a couple of weeks ago that she grew up with her cousins playing that game at holidays, and she's like still to this day
A little traumatized by
yeah,
it.
a little traumatized. Like maybe the gag reflex, like just seeing the game, she was kind of like
she was
a little on edge.
Well, yeah, she was like looking
I'm
at all
like,
the different flavors.
Yeah, that's
She was
about
looking
what
at all
it
the
was.
different flavors, and she was kind of having like a visceral reaction
Yeah.
to it. So that'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be fun to play the.
It'll be fun for us.
Yeah. She's probably not going to enjoy herself. And
No.
definitely might not come back, but we'll enjoy ourselves.
She
here.
was about to do remote today too, because she has some other things going on work wise, but she's like, no, I can fit you guys in.
And I was like, oh, well, thank you. Appreciate it. But we'll talk to Avarie for the 9:00 hour.
You know what? I'll take it.
We'll get into some Husker football stuff with her before we switch gears and try and get her to eat a barf jelly bean. That's the show today. There is a bunch of stuff to get into. Obviously, Creighton and Iowa played last night, and I never really thought I'd be like the old man who's like, we need to play games earlier. That 9:15 start was a little rough. It was a little...
Well, it's rough for people like us.
Yeah, when you
for everybody else, it's fine.
Yeah, in every other job I've ever had, it would have been fine. For this job, I was like, oh gosh, why can't we tip this thing off at like 6?
Sometimes though, I don't go to bed until 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
So this wasn't out of routine for me fully. But it was still late, and I did get a nap in the yesterday afternoon. I kind of had to. I was feeling very sore and shaken up, and I'm like, I'm just gonna fall asleep on the couch. So we were talking about things to fall asleep to before the show started, and Avatar was on in the background.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, that's kind of a great movie to fall asleep to because it's long.
Yeah.
So you watch a little bit of it, and you're like, gosh, I still have 2.5 hours, and so you just go, oh.
So
Conk.
yeah, I used to always sleep with the TV on, and then my wife can't really sleep that way. So when we met and whatever, I stopped doing that. But I wear headphones to bed now, so
Yeah,
I
that's weird.
I play music on my headphones, and it kind of gives me the background noise I need to fall asleep.
I would try to sing, and then my brain would be firing on all cylinders, and it just wouldn't be good.
So the key is I have a specific playlist. So it's like A, kind of soothing music, and then B, songs that I've heard a bunch. So it's like when I used to watch TV before I would go to bed, it would be stuff that I'd seen a million times, so I wouldn't be
Like a sitcom.
yeah, or like something I liked, so that it was kind of soothing to me, but something I'd seen so much that I wouldn't be so interested that I couldn't fall asleep. Because you can't watch like a new movie as you're trying to fall asleep, right?
Robbie was a big Bachelor fan, Shane.
No,
That's
I
what he used to watch.
You know what I used to watch actually is I used to watch Moneyball all the time before I would fall asleep.
Another long movie.
Yeah, and like like Aaron Sorkin stuff is perfect because it's like all talking. There's no like loud noises out of the middle of nowhere to kind of wake you up or grab your attention. It's just people talking the whole time. So Aaron Sorkin movies are elite for falling asleep to. And I like him. I'm not even saying that as an insult. Like I like the movie just in general. But if you are looking for something to fall asleep, Sorkin movies are chef's kiss there.
Tell you what, we couldn't fall asleep to that Creighton game though.
No, that thing has on pure rocket fuel. That thing was you took like a track meet, shoved a firecracker up its butt, and you got the Creighton, Iowa game. It was, and for as fast paced as the first half was, the second half was even more so. And Especially there was that stretch, I think about the first 10 minutes of the second half, where Creighton looked unbeatable, where they stretched out that 17-point lead, and obviously they slowed down after that.
Well, and partially they slowed down because they were trying to get Trey that last assist.
Yes.
You could tell
he was hunting for it a little bit.
Not only was Kugler like really playing into that stat because it was a first time, it was a historic moment. I was ready to tweet out his Trey. I was ready, and it just never happened.
Got to save that one for the drafts.
Right. But you could tell that this team was like so badly wanting to get it for him.
They were searching for it.
And so it slowed down a little bit, and the offense was slowing down. And then it was like, okay, what can Trey develop to try to get an open look?
Yeah.
And it turned into a lot of what I think we saw last year with Nembhard.
It was a little too ball dominant.
Yeah, where he was trying to create a play on his own and then find the open man in case somebody dropped off to help. And so that's why I think Creighton slowed down a little bit, because they got away from their game. They were trying too hard for something.
Yeah.
And it didn't cost them in the end because they were fine where they were at. But against a team like Iowa
that can score in bunches like
you
that,
have to be cautious to take that approach.
I also think there was, and I think it kind of goes into what you're saying, I think it was a little bit of they lost focus on what had gotten them there. Like Trey had gotten 9 assists to that point because of how good they were moving the ball in general. It's not because he was ball dominant and creating everything. And I understand kind of the it would have been the first points, rebounds, assist, triple-double in Creighton history. It would have been the first triple-double not by Benoit Benjamin in Creighton history, which is a wild stat.
Well, that's a long time ago when your name is Benoit.
Well, I mean, it's not even it was out of time even when he played, because he played like the 80s, I think. And it was out of time even when he was at Creighton. You're like, Benoit, really? You would have thought he was some 90-year-old man when he was playing at Creighton, but you could kind of tell that they lost focus a little bit, because you get up by 17, everything was working. I mean, everything was working for Creighton. And so you feel like you can let up a little bit, but you're right, with a team like Iowa that has a ton of firepower, and just not quite as much as Creighton did. You do have to be a little bit careful there. They got it down to 5 at one point, and then Creighton kind of got it back in gear. But the funny thing about that was, so Creighton didn't have a field goal for the last 6.5 minutes and still scored 92 points.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
Bonkers. That's insane.
And they shot the ball incredibly well, like you said, in the second half. But, kudos to Iowa. They can run and play with any team.
Yeah, that's
any team. If they shoot like that,
yes.
If they play as fast as they did, they can play with any team. 17 of 35 in the first half from the field. Creighton was 15 of 35. In the second half, Iowa was 17 of 33. Creighton was 17 of 27. Now you may be wondering, like, what the heck? Like, how in the world did they lose that game if field goal percentages basically match? Well, then you look at the three pointers, and Creighton had the edge in that department. But the big edge was from the stripe.
It was free throws, yeah.
From the charity stripe. Because if you go back and you look at the stats there, Iowa was 10 of 14. Good percentage, about 70%. Creighton was 18 of 24, right at 75%. But if you subtract those 10 free throws extra, there was only 8 points there.
Yeah.
The final score was what? 92 to 84, which is separated by how many points? 8. Iowa can play with any team, especially if Ben Crick shoots the way he did.
For sure, yeah. And, that's kind of a product of the way Creighton wanted to play that defensively. I know Kugler mentioned it it was a Kugler ball. I don't remember which one of them actually said it, but mentioned the way that they run their pick and roll coverage where Kalkbrenner drops rather than hard hedging or switching or anything like that. And the defense is designed to allow 15 to 18 foot jumpers. And if you're going to make those, then you're going to be able to stay in the game. Now, we saw during that stretch in the second half, you have to make them at an almost unsustainable clip in order to stay in a game the way when Creighton's playing offense that way. Because in the second half, Crick did slow down a little bit. And instead of, I think in the first half, he was like 7 of 8 or something. I mean, he was some stupid percentage in the first half. And he missed a few more in the second half. And that kind of led to the difference and allowing Creighton to spread to spread that lead out to 17 midway through the second half there. So no, but Iowa, I was really impressed by them. I thought there were times, especially early in the first half defensively, where they were way better than I realized.
Well, they had 7 steals.
Yeah.
In the game, but in the first half especially, they were taking the ball away from Creighton like it was, taking candy from a baby.
And that's Creighton, I think, had 9 first half turnovers. They only ended up with 12, so they cleaned that up quite a bit in the second half. So that was an area for them as well. But yeah, I was impressed by Iowa. Honestly, I hadn't seen them play a ton this year. Obviously, this was only their third game, but I'd only seen bits and pieces of their first 2, and I was really impressed. They had way more firepower offensively than I was expecting. And this is honestly most of the time in years past when Creighton's had teams like this, and they could, they were really potent offensively. Anytime somebody tried to run with them, they got blown out of the building. And Iowa almost did, but they were able to kind of hang in there. I was actually super impressed with Iowa.
And speaking of impressive performances, at first with Kalkbrenner, the thing I thought of in the first half was he's a much better finisher than we're seeing. He's a much better defender than we're seeing. And his ability to rewire at halftime and come out and put up the performance he did in the second half, I thought was a pretty wow-like performance. It's somebody that you can just say, even on his worst days, he can still turn into his best day.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of players that just can't do that.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Kalk is one of those guys that is looking at the potential of being in the NBA next year. So he's got kind of that extra edge already. And he proved that in the offseason when he was going through the camps with Trey and things like that. But I was really impressed with how he bounced back when things weren't going incredibly right for him.
Yeah.
It's not like he put himself in position where he was in crazy foul trouble, right? Because there are times where if something isn't going well, you'll try to overcommit on something else, and then you'll try to recover, and then boom, you send somebody to the line, and now you're putting yourself and your team in harm's way because you're on the bench, and you have to rely on, Fred King to come in and be who you need to be in the game. But Kalk never let the negative times of that game impact how we played the rest of the game. That's crazy maturity, but that also shows the maturity of this whole bunch and the culture of this team and the team that Coach Mack leads, because across the board, even when people aren't having their best night, that's what you get out of them. You always get somebody that turns the negative into the positive.
Yeah. And you mentioned Fred King. That was probably his best game at Creighton so far.
Well, and he stepped up when he needed to.
He did, because Kalkbrenner wasn't in crazy foul trouble, but he'd have the 2 in the first half, and so King got a little bit longer run probably earlier than he would have. And this is the first time I can remember, certainly against a Power 5 opponent, that when Fred King was on the floor, it wasn't just, hey, let's stay even, let's stay neutral, let's not lose any ground until Kalkbrenner comes back. It was actually, hey, Fred King is gonna provide positive minutes here. He's going to provide a plus effort here for Creighton. Honestly, same thing with Farabello. This was one of Farabello's better games as a Creighton Blue Jay. This is kind of the high end of what I thought he was going to bring last year. The shooting, the steady hand, the ability to play either guard spot. I was really impressed with Farabello last night, and and we saw the rotation from Creighton tighten up a little bit, right? So outside of Dotzler, who got that real brief stint at the end of the first half when Trey picked up his second, this was an 8-man rotation. It was pretty tight. Now, I think they may, depending situationally, play some other guys in other spots, like a Jonathan Lawson or Dotzler may get some extra minutes, but
more than 3 seconds.
Right, yeah, more than the 3
and
seconds.
He almost buried that.
Dude, I would say
full court heave.
A reserve player after my own heart. He plays 3 seconds and he gets a 3 up. God bless you.
Right. And I say full court heave. I know it's like 3/4 of the court.
Man, he almost buried that.
Back rim.
He let it go, and I was like, oh.
Well, and you know what's funny too is it's his first shot of the game. Yes, he just warmed up, but he was just on the bench for over 19 minutes.
Yeah,
because
which is
you have TV timeouts and things.
It's like 45 minutes real time.
Yeah,
since he'd done anything physical, And he wasn't expecting to go in the game there because Trey picked up that second foul.
Let alone get the ball.
Yeah, and then he gets a steal and is like, well, I guess this is going up now. And the wherewithal to actually get the shot up with that, I mean, yeah,
that would have gone in. I probably would have popped off my couch.
Oh.
Like I may have fist bumped. I may have gave like a little yeah.
I definitely had the Leonardo DiCaprio moment where I sat up and was like,
is it going in?
That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you had your wife probably on the other side of the couch doing the other Leonardo DiCaprio laughing.
No. She was in bed by this point. She called it a night by halftime. So, but no, Creighton comes away with a good win. They'll continue to try and win in the non-con here. I don't even remember who they have up next.
Well, it's just last point.
Texas Southern.
Yeah, last point I'll say here, that's going to be a tough game for them.
I think they'll be okay.
Oh, will they? It's going to be hard to run with Creighton if you're any team.
Yeah.
And I think watching the game film, if Connor Stallions was there, he would have told Jim Harbaugh that already, that this team is not afraid to throw up an off-balance jumper from downtown at any point because they have the confidence in their shooting ability that majority of those will fall. There were some shots that Shireman took early on in transition where I'm like, seems a little rushed, and then he buried it, and I go, that's why I'm not playing, or that's why I'm not coaching, right? There's just a point to understand with this team that, yes, they're really, really good, but if you are an opponent, fatigue will catch up with you in a game like this. And that's why Creighton was able to extend it to 17 points in the second half. And that's why they were ultimately able to come out with the W, even trying to give Trey his triple-double chance.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things that we want to get to as we come up through the show. Obviously, college football playoff came out last night. Same top four, but we did have a little bit of movement there. Wanted to get to some more coaching turnover.
Oh, really?
I love
more movement.
Not
even just in college.
No, I love a coaching silly season, and I feel like we're about to dive headfirst right into it. And then
there's a lot of good names out there.
And then, I know you had some thoughts on the Harbaugh suspension we didn't get to yesterday.
I still think it's so stupid.
So we can get to that as well. Also going to break down some things that we were looking at from the Nebraska game on
You're
Saturday.
Innocent until proven guilty.
We'll start to shift our focus. We talked to Jim Polsey from the Wisconsin State Journal yesterday about Wisconsin. But as that kind of Wednesday, Thursday range, we start turning our focus from what happened last week to what's going to happen this week against Wisconsin. So we'll kind of start to make that shift in focus. But there was a particular play we wanted to break down a little bit and get into more depth with. So we will do all of that. You can become a part of the show on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876. You can email us. I'm Ravi at hurrdatsports.com. It's Andrew at hurrdat.com. Or, of course, you can always follow us on Twitter, YouTube, where you're following the show. Get in those YouTube comments like our guy TK and our friend RS, who's chiming in from the Philippines again this morning.
Funny. TK goes, Iowa basketball is inverse Iowa football. All offense.
Yeah, just 100%. Maybe they should hire McCaffrey as the offensive coordinator for Iowa football.
That won't work because it's not related to Kurt.
Shoot. I actually have a question about McCaffrey when we come back.
All right.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back.
92 points.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Creighton's got 92 points, and Creighton will end with 92 points. A 92-84 win for the Creighton Blue Jays. What a battle tonight in Omaha. Trey Alexander was the best player on the floor.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Andrew Rogers. We're live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. You can find us on YouTube, Twitter. You can't come in, but you can also find us at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill and the H&H Chevrolet stage. Yeah, doors don't open quite yet, but
nope, not till 11.
If you want to, creepily look through the windows and be like, hey, those are the guys, I suppose you could. We might call the security or something on you because it's weird. But,
or if we like you, we'll let you in.
Yeah, if you're somebody we know and like, then we'll think about it. But,
I don't have to know you. If you seem like you have a good heart, I'll let you in.
My screening process is going to be a little bit more diligent than Andrew's. Apparently.
Hey, that guy looks nice.
No, Andrew, don't take candy from him. You're like the kid that's like, there's a van that just has free puppies on it, and you're like, woo.
Well, oddly enough, my mom was worried that I would walk up with a stranger growing up because all I would do was talk to people. I know it's shocking.
I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, that was a real thing.
So I wanted to ask you about Fran McCaffrey because, we'll move on to football after this, but I was watching him last night, and he's a pretty famously hot-headed
level-headed
coach,
guy, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
He's, you've got Mount McCaffrey, or that may that may explode at any moment. And he's a guy that looks so normal. Like Bo Pelini has an angry face, like he's got resting rage face. Mm-hmm. You look at Bo and you're like, yeah, I could see him wanting to like rip someone's head off on a football field. Bob Knight, kind of the same way. He's got a bunch of BS. RIP. He's got the cranky curmudgeon face. That you're like, yeah, I could see him being kind of an old cranky dude.
I'm with you.
Fran looks like he wants to sell me insurance.
Yeah, that or be your accountant.
Yes, yeah, like a very mild-mannered business professional. And so my thought is, and I don't know how much, I know you worked in Iowa for a little while covering up in Sioux City, but so I don't know how much, if any, interaction you had with him. But I wonder with guys like that, when they're off the basketball court, how, like, if that's how they are in real life too. Because like I know for sure Bo was for the most part a really nice guy, but he still had moments in his real life where he would just pop off on people, and it was like it was part of his personality, right? But Fran just seems so mild-mannered that I'm having a really hard time envisioning him out of context, like losing it on somebody.
So unfortunately, I have too much of an understanding of what Fran can be because I was covering him in Iowa a lot when I worked there. So I came across this meter that somebody created called the FranCon meter. And I pulled it up so that you could see it. They call it the FranCon alert system. How to recognize the stages of madness. And it goes from FranCon 9 to FranCon 1. And so FranCon 9 is extremely rare, but it's calm. FranCon 8, slightly irritated, signs of facial coloration.
Okay.
FranCon 7, upset. Imagine we're only on 7 right now and it's upset.
Yeah, we're at upset, yeah.
That's his default setting.
Okay.
FranCon 6, very agitated. Note defensive stance. FranCon 5, the pout. Hands and Hulk smash motion. FranCon 4, mad again. Ineffective pouting, gets mad again. FranCon 3.
We definitely saw FranCon 4 last night, but go ahead, continue.
FranCon 3, a bunch of symbols which indicate an expletive.
Yeah, we saw 3 last night too.
Fran is on the move. FranCon 2, the calm before the storm. Meltdown is imminent. And FranCon 1, full meltdown. Nothing escapes Mad Fran's wrath.
At what point during in the FranCon scale are his assistant coaches holding him back? Is that Fran's on the move?
So actually, no, that's on full meltdown is what it looks like here, at least in the photos, because they show us like his facial expressions.
Oh, there's a visual guide. That's very helpful.
Yep, see the Hulk smash and defensive stance, and like this is his slightly irritated face. And look, there's his calm.
That's the picture of him with Coach McDermott. That's the exact face he's making with Coach McDermott. He's making FranCon 9. That is the rare call.
FranCon 9 is when he gets to the podium before the season starts and talks about how excited he is for the season.
Ready for basketball. So that's what I'm wondering is, like, is that how he is in real life too? Like just in normal everyday life?
I don't know if he has any children, but if you dated one of his children and you get over to the house,
they play on the team.
Right, I meant like
younger children.
Younger.
I was like
like in high school.
One of them was playing basketball.
That's what I meant. Like, I don't know if he has any kids in high school. I know he has the McCaffrey brothers and Patrick and Connor. But if he has any like in high school and you're going over, you're like taking his daughter to homecoming, is he upset at the door? Like when you ring the doorbell, is that like first whistle? Like Fran gets into default upset mode.
He goes
like Fran's good. Like he's on the couch.
He goes
he's
from
calm,
9 to 7.
Right. His daughter comes down the stairs. He's like, "Wow, you look beautiful." Things like that. And then all of a sudden the doorbell rings and it's upset. And then he's walking to the door and it's FranCon 5. Right. He's in defensive stance and things.
Yeah.
I could just imagine that like going. He could take his coach mannerisms home. I could see that. I could see it. I don't think he's always calm. I don't think he's always FranCon 9.
Yeah, I don't either. I wonder about people like that, when or how they, like, if they ever turn it off. Because I was never like that as a coach. I was almost too calm for some people's taste. Like I would yell, mostly just for a volume issue, right? Like, because gyms are loud, especially in game, but even practice, like gyms are loud. You have to yell to kind of make sure people hear you. I wasn't like an angry yeller very often, although when I was, it was very effective because it kind of shocked people a little bit. But so I don't have a frame of reference for the real angry coach and what they look like outside of that. It's always fascinated me.
Yeah, I've never been the angry coach. Now, I haven't had much time in the sport to be an angry coach just yet. But
well, don't be that guy.
I won't be a Fran by any means.
Don't be a Fran or a Bo. Don't be a Bo either.
I'm more of a pull-aside guy. Like, my voice is loud enough to carry, so
Sure.
I don't really have to yell and scream all too much. I kind of take after my mom when I say, like, guys, I'm just really disappointed with the effort. And like when you hear I'm disappointed, like that hits home more than me yelling and screaming in your face. I don't know if that's because I take more, I reflect more on that, and it just hits me deeper. But I think that was always like good reinforcement for me to be like, I'm going to change the way I do this. But yeah, no, I don't think I'll ever be a Fran. But it's funny to see the Fran guy meter, and whoever created that is a
oh, you love to see it.
Is a genius.
So I did promise we're going to get to some football, and we will. Obviously, we've got plenty of the show left here, but one of the things that I did want to get to, and I just wondering if this moved the needle for you at all, was Georgia moving from 2 to 1 in the college football playoff ranking. In the next segment, because I want to give it a little more space, I want to talk about kind of the Chip Kelly, Ken Dorsey thing a little bit. But does Georgia moving from 2 to 1 move the needle for you at all?
I don't think so. I think it's still too early. Georgia has the win against Mizzou, and then who'd they beat?
Ole Miss. They just beat Ole Miss, which is a good win.
Yeah, it was a good win. It was a really good win.
I think they've got Kentucky, which is an okay win.
But I don't think moving from 2 to 1 is really a needle move for me.
Yeah,
because they were already there. If somebody dropped out, and say Washington,
like if Florida
in,
State and Washington,
right, or even that situation, like say Florida State doesn't even lose a game, they could still end up being the 5,
especially if Washington beats Oregon again in the Pac-12 title game.
Right?
Like Washington has the resume building on the way out that they could definitely jump Florida State.
Yeah, that win in the Pac-12 championship would move the needle for me in watching Florida State drop in that regard. But outside of that, if it's the 1, 2, 3 teams, if it's Ohio State, Georgia, and Michigan, until I see one of those teams drop out, I don't think I'll have any major needle moves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting a little bit. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan are going to play, so that negates some of the importance of that. But I thought it was interesting with the fact that Ohio State really didn't stumble at all. That's what I kind of felt interested. They beat Michigan State 38-3. They beat up on Rutgers the week before that. The Wisconsin game was probably a little closer than you wanted, but I mean, Ohio State has relatively good wins. They beat a pretty good Notre Dame team at the time. They beat Penn State. They'll have an opportunity to beat Michigan, obviously, in another week and a half. But my big thing that I found curious was, Georgia had a good win, but it's not like Ohio State stumbled, and they seemed pretty comfortable with Ohio State in that one spot.
I think it was just inevitable, though, with the committee, knowing that eventually Georgia was going to get there if they stayed undefeated, and they were just waiting for these games to do it.
To actually have the resume to be number one.
So, being back-to-back national champions already, it doesn't surprise me that the committee's like, okay, Georgia, you can be number 1 again.
All right, coming up next, let's get into some of that coaching carousel here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
The young men, I think from the moment after the last game, a Michigan State game, they came in there and they had the right attitude. You know, and it always starts with attitude, and they wanted to fix it. And it was one of those games where I told them before kickoff, I was like, I can get a vibe of the guys, and I felt like it was kind of like Illinois, where I'm like, you guys are gonna make it right today. And they did. They played their butts off. You know what I mean? So you gotta respect that. You know, those guys put themselves in a position to know what to do and to know how to do it. But then their mind was right. You know, their attitude was right, which is the most important thing. And it was fun watching them play. Like those kind of games, you just sit back and you just watch them play and you're in awe. You know, some of those plays were, Javen coming off of a block and then jumping on the guy, and as he's falling down to rip the ball out, that's unreal. You know, Omar Brown is getting blocked. He arms over on the block, and then as he's tackling the guy, he sees the ball and then he rips out the ball. Like, those are some big time plays, man. You know what I mean? So I kind of felt it. The coaching staff kind of felt it pre kickoff, and again, they went out there and we just had to make one or two more plays.
Wrap it up, hour number one here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, Twitter, YouTube, live at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on the H&H Chevrolet stage. TK with a good point in the YouTube chat where he says ranking Missouri in at 9, which they are They were ahead at 9, or they were ranked at 9. They were the top 2-loss team in the country. They were ahead of 1-loss Louisville. They jumped 5 spots this week after. I mean, listen, I get that it was a ranked win, and they did it pretty resoundingly. I don't know anybody who thinks Tennessee is that good. And so, I don't know. TK says he thinks it's some elite schedule padding by the committee
it could be
to make Georgia, to inflate Georgia's schedule a little bit.
And it probably is, actually.
Which, to justify the ranking, which I kind of get. But, I mean, really outside of that Georgia, or outside of the Missouri and Ole Miss games the last 2 weeks, which are good wins, that Missouri game was pretty close. So making Missouri look better kind of justifies the Georgia position a little bit. Now, Georgia very well might be the best team in the country. They're certainly playing closer to it now than they were earlier in the year. I really thought earlier in the year they looked vulnerable, and now you look at it and it's like, man, they kind of look like a juggernaut again. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of that plays out. And we're still a couple weeks away from that really mattering with the rankings here, but it is good to keep an eye on because, like you said, that Florida State-Washington 4-5 could very easily flip. Now, where it's going to get really interesting is once that Ohio State-Michigan game plays out, you're going to have one of those teams with 1 loss. After Washington and Oregon, you very well could have both of those teams who are really, really good at 1 loss. You've got a really good Texas, really good Alabama at 1 loss. This thing could get really messy for the committee in a hurry. And they are just praying for certain results to make their life easier.
Yeah, a lot of times that I thought about too with the Heisman voting.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because the Heisman voting has gotten kind of all out of sorts because of the way Jaden Daniels is playing. And he's not a guy that's in any position to have LSU in title contention, but the stats that he's putting up are Heisman worthy.
Yeah, they're crazy.
You have to think about that. It's the same thing with Penix. It's the same thing with Nix. It's the same thing with Travis and so forth down the list. It's so hectic there. It's so hectic in the college football playoff right now. The good news for everybody is there's still 2 more weeks of football.
Still a couple more games to help sort this thing out. But we're pretty late in the process for it to be like, man, I really don't know how this is going to go. Because a lot of times by this point, it's like, yeah, this is probably how it's going to play out. Even if Georgia loses to Alabama in the title game, doesn't really matter, whatever. I don't feel that way this year. I feel like there's definitely some.
There's a team that could be
different. I mean,
I
look all the way down to Alabama at number 8, and I was like, if any of those teams make the college football playoff, not surprised. Because Alabama is going to play Georgia in the SEC title game. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan are going to play. Washington and Oregon are going to play again. Texas still has that win over Alabama. I just look at it and I go, man, you might end up with like 6 or 7 really good 1-loss teams. And it's going to be a mess.
Well, and
the worst team that might be left at Florida State might be the one that's undefeated. Like, that would be the crazy part of it all, right?
And if they end up undefeated, then you're put into a weird spot of, well, okay, Oregon would have won the Pac-12 title game then, and they are, 6th right now?
Yeah, they're 6th right now, but a win over Washington probably bumps them. It'd be one of the better wins of the year.
And so now you go back and think, though, well, they played once already. Like, does that play into this at all? And with Florida State undefeated, it's a tough position to be in if you're the committee, because it's hard to say, hey, you're undefeated and you're not in.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell a team that.
Especially if you're the only one left that's undefeated. There's a scenario, and it's not a likely one, because you probably either Ohio State or Michigan will be undefeated as well, whoever wins that game, because I don't think they're losing to whoever comes out of the crap hole West. But so you're probably going to end up with 2, but you can make an argument that Florida State could be the 2nd undefeated team and deserve to be left out. And I like Florida State. People know this about me. I enjoy Florida State football.
I'm a Jordan Travis fan too.
I really like Jordan Travis. I like Jared Verse. I really like Mike Norvell. I think he's a really good football coach. Texas A&M, I swear to God, if you steal another one of our coaches, I will lose it.
What does our mean? Are you now a Florida State
fan?
I
like Florida State. I've always liked Florida State. But, I think there's a very realistic world in which Florida State is undefeated and either Ohio State or Michigan's undefeated, and Florida State would deserve to be left out. And that's why I am very excited for the 12-team playoff next year, because then you don't have to worry about these conversations.
Well, and this week too, I think it's the week of most like random opponents for teams. Like Alabama plays Chattanooga.
Yeah, this is the
win bump week for those teams.
This is the late season bye game that a lot of these teams play that don't have to play.
Mississippi has Louisiana Monroe.
Florida State had North Alabama. You've got some. I mean, Ohio State has Minnesota. Oh wait, that's a conference game. My bad. Anytime you play the Big Ten West from the East, it kind of feels like a
LSU has Georgia State.
Yeah, so you've got a bunch of those random one-off games. So this
is like an SEC thing.
It is like a SEC and ACC to a certain extent as well. But it's a very heavy SEC thing because they don't play the 9 conference games, or they aren't required to play the 9 conference games. They only have to, I believe, play the 8 it might be 8 and 9 or 9.
You're right.
Yeah, that's right. So that's their extra one in there. But I wanted to get to, it's getting to that time of year, obviously, where the college football playoff rankings start to make a little bit more. They usually start to make a little bit more sense. I think they're getting messier as we go along this year. But there's some messy situations going on at places like UCLA as well, where there's a report, not that Chip Kelly has been fired, but that he's going to be fired, which is also a very strange the way it was worded. They're
it's an odd report.
After the USC UCLA game, it's most likely that Chip Kelly's going to be fired. I'm like, I don't really so that's this week, obviously. And I'm just like, what is happening here? Like, just either you're going to fire him. Like,
how do you tell your coach that, hey, no matter what happens, even if you win, you're going to get canned?
Well, like, if he wins, are they not going to fire him? That's my question, because they're like, it's most likely that he's going to get fired. It's like, okay, so
he's probably getting fired either way.
He wins, he gets a stay of execution for 1 week, and then you wait till the end of the season to fire. I don't know. It was super weird. I am basically just treating it as Chip Kelly has been fired. Kind of the same way I treated it when the first reports of Jimbo Fisher were like, yeah, he's going to get let go. It's not happened yet, but it's happening. So UCLA is an interesting job. And I look at this because they're moving into the Big Ten. I wonder how much that played into the decision. I don't look at Chip Kelly as necessarily a Big Ten coach stylistically. Dan Lanning at Oregon coming into the Big Ten makes a ton of sense. Kalen DeBoer, I think, can be. They're not as physical as Oregon is yet, but he's also only in year 2. So I think that Kalen DeBoer, because he's from this part of the country, he kind of understands Big Ten football and Midwest and football and all that kind of stuff. I think he'll be fine. The guys that I really wondered about were Lincoln Riley, because they can't play defense at all. And I think that has a big reason. Obviously,
can't play offense right now.
Well, yeah, the 4 losses is a big reason why Alex Grinch was fired, but I think going to the Big Ten does too. And then Chip Kelly, who was pretty good last year, took a little while to get going at UCLA. Now they're 6-4. And he's going to be let go as well. I just wonder how much you look at that and say, yeah, maybe that's a move they don't make if they're not moving conferences.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is you kind of alluded to it, the direction a team will go if they are making a coaching change. Do they go defensive approach? Do they try to go
especially after an offensive heavy guy like Kelly?
Right. Or do you try to run it back again and try to stay with what modern day football is turning into, which is more of an offensive approach than total defense? Because we see it here in Nebraska. We hear it in Iowa. It's not exciting to watch Big Ten West football when your offense isn't moving the football. Right. Like, yes, you can clamor at and say your defense is the best thing since sliced bread, and it may be close to that. Yeah. But it doesn't make it exciting football at the end of the day. So transitioning over, what approach do you take? I think the best approach for a team to take is defensive to start. Go with the defensive coach, and that's what scares me with UCLA. Because when you think defense, you're going to look across the country and think, who's putting together a pretty solid defensive group? Oh, there's a guy over in Nebraska named Tony White who graduated.
What's that? Where UCLA? Where he go to school?
Yeah, he played. He was a Bruin. Shoot. And if you want to make a smooth transition to the Big Ten, makes a lot of sense to have a guy like Tony White who's been there, done that.
Yeah, knows the ropes a little bit already.
And plays for another program or coaches for another program that has money to just throw at you.
Absolutely. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our friend Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Here. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer, Brian Christopherson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a circus act.
Brian Christopherson.
Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Brian Christopherson.
I kind of enjoy that.
Here is Brian Christopherson.
It's like, I mean, it's like when when I was in South Carolina last year. If I thought of the Big Ten, it's what it is. I mean, big, strong, physical. The defenses are unbelievably sound, and they make you work for everything. The details of, getting the ball out and just playing third down defense, red zone defense is it's very impressive. I think the coaching is, at a very high level in this league, and the players are, there's no question. This is one of the toughest leagues in the country, and week in, week out, having to play these defenses is grueling mentally and physically.
As we kick off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and we are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline by Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
What's up, BC?
Oh, we are, just living the dream over here, having a good time. Just getting breaking news that Deshaun Watson's not playing football anymore this year. I'm sure that's very surprising to everyone since he didn't play a whole lot of football before this year. But BC, want to hop into the Nebraska, some of the comments we've heard from Nebraska coaches this week. And, going back to Rule, I believe it was on Monday, and kind of the way he insisted that everything be put on him in terms of the criticism and responsibility. Like, on the one hand, I appreciate that from a head coach. He's not throwing anybody under the bus. He's taking accountability. But on the other hand, like, we all know as grown adults, like, certain things are not directly his fault, right? Like, are they under his purview as head coach? Sure. But like, quarterback development specifically really falls more under Satterfield than Rule. I guess, how do you kind of take those comments as someone who understands what's going on a little bit more granular level, that it's like, yeah, okay, we can blame Rule for hiring Satterfield or whatever, but at the end of the day, we know he's not the one in charge of what we're seeing.
Well, first off, it's just smart head coaching to not take that public,
Sure.
Yeah. So what he said makes a lot of sense. And also, I don't know in private that there's a big clash between what's going on either or anything like that, because this staff is so intertwined, and I knew when he hired the guys he did, when you looked at their resumes and their track records and how far they went back together, that when Rule speaks of that day-to-day process, the guys he hired is a staff that he's willing and wanting to take it on for a while with. It's not going to be just like I don't think in very few cases would it ever be like a 1-year adventure somewhere, or maybe even a 2-year adventure. I don't know. I just think he has enough of a belief in how they operate and how they're trying to complement each other, even though they're not, that I really think he has great respect for all of his coaches and sort of how they're going about things. And I know on the outside, when we're looking in right now, you're looking at the offensive numbers, and let's see, they're 126th in passing offense, 114th in total offense, 118th in scoring offense. So it's frustrating. And then you see that QB play, and obviously there's going to be heavy critiques of, the coach who is leading that room. And so that just goes with the business. They understand that too, and that's part of it as well. So I just think on Monday he set the tone that these are my guys. We're going to keep rolling with these guys. And for that idea that was maybe going to be a discussion 2 or 3 weeks from now about, okay, what's Rule doing with his OC and stuff like that, it's just not on the table. So I thought in a way he kind of slid in there that's not a conversation right now. I realize outside the walls you're going to critique and do whatever you want to say about how it's going, and that's fair. But this is a process that we believe in. So I felt like that's what was trying to be established there.
BC, I agree with you that the Satterfield thing, or moving on from Satterfield, was never going to be a conversation. Do you think it's going to be a conversation, though, about hiring a separate quarterback coach in the offseason?
Well, you never know. I would never say never on that. Not with insight about some direction they're leaning. Within their staff, they'll have to decide. Josh Martin was kind of on an interim basis at the tight end spot, and I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying if we're going to have this conversation, you don't know what they're going to do there after he filled in this year. He might just stay in that post, but maybe not, and you can move some things. I don't know if that's a possibility. If it is, last year, about this time in December, we thought for a week or so, that Satterfield was actually going to coach the tight ends, and there would actually be a different QB coach. So when you ask that question, it triggers my mind back to 10 or 11 months ago, and at least knows that's a possibility that could
Jake
happen.
Peets, baby, Jake Peets, bring him home. BC, you talk about one-year adventures, and I'm going to go to the other side, maybe in a more positive direction, but could be looked at as, a negative question to ask. I don't know how much you've been following the coaching carousel, or at least riding the wave like we are over here, but with jobs opening up now more and more, and with certain locations being, we'll just call them enticing, maybe for the defensive coordinator at Nebraska. Is it a worry to you at all that the UCLA job popped up? Because I think, to me, that's the one, or could pop up. I don't want to say it's popped up just yet, because we haven't officially seen Chip Kelly out at UCLA. But with UCLA transitioning to the Big Ten and Tony White being a former player at UCLA, does that worry you at all as like if there was any job to pop up, I didn't want it to be this one?
It doesn't worry me, because it's one of those deals where if that head coaching job were open and they offered Tony White, you just have to say congratulations. It's like, because that's like a different level. I mean, if he got a Power 5 head coaching job put in front of him, yes, it would be a blow to what Nebraska's been trying to establish, but there's really nothing you can do about that. It's more the ones I think about, like, is there any other job out there that's on a similar level as far as title, DC, associate head coach type of positions somewhere else that you have to compete against? And if there's that sort of thing that's out there, or they sniff that's out there, and I'm sure if they'd have those conversations face to face, I would do whatever it took to match and go beyond and keep Tony White in that seat. But your question is a good one, Andrew, because it brings attention to just another thing that's out there, and how you got to hang on to the bar on this ride now, because we're now entering those weeks and months. But that one in itself, I would just tip my hat into Tony if that happened, and be like, congrats, man. Like if he got it, it would be tough. But I do want them, if there's any job that is viewed as lateral or the same as far as defensive coordinator wise, I really hope Nebraska can win that standoff, understanding the importance of what he's doing.
BC, wanted to move to the quarterback room here. Obviously, we know Harburg has the ankle injury. Maybe I'm out of line here. I don't think he's playing this week based on that injury and his skill set. We know Jeff Sims is the only one that's actually healthy, but it sounds like Chubba Purdy can go as they split reps this week. If you had to put money on it, who's your starting quarterback at taking that first snap in Madison?
If I put my Toyota RAV on it, I would say it's got 101,000 miles now, so I don't know how much it's valued at. But I would say Jeff Sims,
like $3-4 grand on that baby, right?
Yeah, so it's something. So I would say
Jeff Sims, though.
Yeah, I kind of do. Not for sure. I like how game Purdy was to the moment on Saturday. I can't say that there's been a lot of people in my timeline who are kind of fired up and like, you got to go the Chubba route now. You got to see what Chubba can offer. And I would love to see, like, hey, if Chubba Purdy got a chance and he just balled out, I'd be the happiest person in the world to write a story like that. Mm-hmm. I'm just not in the crowd that thinks like it's obvious that you just go that route. Like I've seen data from every quarterback that's in that room now that leaves me uncomfortable about how it could go. And they're going to have to break trends for Nebraska to probably win up there. But I would say Sims maybe because he's more healthy. I've always thought like Sims had the higher ceiling there, but it doesn't matter if you're turning the ball over every 5 or 6 plays. So he's got to somehow get past that. I honest to goodness thought, guys, we were maybe going to get a little bit of a redemption arc for Jeff Sims after a few plays last Saturday. He like kind of came out after that first series. It was like, okay, he was firing it. You could see how quick the ball comes out of his hands and good. They get 27. And then after that 4th and 2 got blown up, it just went the other way. And those 2 plays, the last 2 turnovers he had were just so disheartening because but both of them were just errors unforced. So I'm nervous about their situation there. I just don't know what the obvious answer is. I'd probably start Sims and I'd have Purdy like ready to roll, a quarter in if it's not going hot.
BC, we've heard a lot. You make that one play and that's the one to win the game. But should this team and staff be thinking about playing to win or focusing on playing it safe? I know that sounds ridiculous, but with a team with all the offensive issues, it's a revolving door of offensive issues. Taking the points versus taking a shot has to be front of mind right now, right?
Yes, I understood what they're saying, and there is truth to that within, I think, the context of a game. But I think in that specific moment, I fall in the crowd and I try to always not say or write things that I didn't think in the moment. And when Nebraska was facing 3rd and goal at the 7, I was standing next to Mike Babcock in the lobby because we'd just come down the elevator, and I was muttering to him. I was like, they just got to get 3 points here. You got to get 3, at least get the 3, put your defense out there. So that was my thought in the moment. That doesn't mean I'm some bright guy, but I was just nervous about, whenever that ball goes in the air, you don't necessarily expect good things to happen right now. And especially in a condensed space, when you have 22 athletic dudes in a 20-yard space on the football field, whenever you get inside their red zone like that, it's just, you got to be really precise or bad things happen at any level, including the NFL. And so that's why, to your question, Andrew, I think the biggest thing is getting those bowl practices right now. And if taking 3 points there can help you do that and build that winning culture, that's the biggest thing that's out there to claim that. So for that specific play, I didn't agree with what they did. For the general thought of within a game, you can't just curl up in a ball in the corner of the room. I get that too. And so they do have to operate, but I think there are moments where you gotta pick and choose there.
BC, do you think, I get what you're saying for sure, but I also kind of have this pushback reaction where we think that, okay, if they had chosen to run the ball, then they have no chance of scoring a touchdown there. And that seems to be what people are insinuating by being like, well, you're either playing for 3 or you're passing the ball. It's like, well, Nebraska's actually better at running the football. Like, isn't there a decent argument to be made that they had a better chance scoring a touchdown by running it 3 times as opposed to throwing ever?
Yeah, that might be the case too. I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying too. I'm just saying on the 3rd and goal on the 7, in most cases with most teams, you'd be like, yeah, that you're throwing it. Like you're watching an NFL game on Sunday or some of the teams that are, rolling at a high level in college offenses, you'd be like, yeah, that's a throw situation and you'll see what happens. And if not, they'll kick the field goal. Sure. But you're right. Nebraska probably, they're stronger up front. I do think when you got the context afterwards or clarification that the first down play was supposed to be a handoff and not a pass, maybe that helped in some people's minds because they at least knew, okay, the first 2 were supposed to be runs. But yeah, I think there was a general sense that within this fan base, which is savvier than people give it credit for, right now, as it's the old Tom Osborne philosophy, when you throw the ball, there's 3 things that can happen and 2 of them are bad. And it feels like right now it's like 2.5 of the 3 things that can, you almost want to raise it if you can, if that's possible to play at the numbers. Like 2.5 out of 3 things are bad. There's nothing good almost, it seems like, can happen.
BC, Sat felt the best days, or at least I shouldn't even say felt. He feels the best days are up ahead for this quarterback room. Question is that next year or is that this season? Because this team is running out of time if he is insinuating that, hey, the best days are up ahead for this quarterback room with only 2 games left.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when he answered that, it was a thought for the offense as a whole, and I do think there's thinking beyond this year involved in that answer. It's like stuff is growing this year with a lot of young players, and we believe as you get into the next season, that's going to start to look pretty good. That's frustrating though if you're fans. I get it. I mean, it's ultra frustrating until they get the 6th win. This is what everything comes back to, and that's why everybody's so anxious around here right now, and that's why. Your timeline and my timeline probably after Saturday's game was a hot mess because it's just like they saw like there it is on the doorstep. They're going to get to that bowl game. That's the step. And then you go from there. And when there's obvious stuff where Nebraska just gets it in its own way and you think they could have done something differently and it doesn't happen, emotions are going to run pretty high. But to Satterfield's point, they have to keep building confidence within those young guys in all public comments. And when they're talking to them, like, this is tracking right. And, there is good young talent there. At the wide receiver spots, those guys could be really good in a year. Like Emmett Johnson's an impressive, young player when he's being called on. And I like some of the young linemen. So what they're saying is it's not completely out there in left field. But they got to get the quarterback. If you don't have that, you can't change that conversation or one of those quarterbacks. And people are very skeptical of this is going to have to develop in a very large way over the course of the next 10 months. Can it happen in 2 games? I don't necessarily see it, but
I don't either.
BC, you mentioned that quarterback room moving forward, and because I agree with both of you. I don't know that the next 2 games are going to show much different out of that room. How many of the guys that are currently there do you think are there next year, and how many guys do you think they're going to bring in from the portal to compete for that job?
It's the $1 million question. It's always a tough one to answer because especially in the college level, I guess I try to have that line, like what do you talk about? What do you not talk about? I don't like to kick guys off the campus sometimes, like specifically, but I would be surprised if everybody stands pat. It's just the way it is. We saw last year how unlikely that is. I would think someone like Harburg will be in the competition still next year, a Nebraska native, and that's probably the obvious one. And then I think there's got to be some entry from the outside, at least one who is a serious entry where like when you see the headline, everybody's like, oh, okay. And they start to get excited around Christmas time or whatever, like that could be something. So I do feel like there's got to be one guy at least like that. If you can get 2, I wouldn't be against it by any means. Now that's difficult. It's hard to get at that position to convince multiple people to come from the outside in at the same time, but there does have to be someone else, I think, to enter this mix and shake things up. Because I don't know, we've seen data. We have data in front of us on all the people. We're not talking out of turn here. We've watched the turnovers pile up, and right now it's standing in the way of Nebraska probably having 7 wins or so. It is. I mean, this could be that kind of season right now, and that position has not met the bar that you have to win at this level.
Well, a big reason for the potential to even get to 7 wins is Coach Rule, and if we go one step back from Coach Rule, you get to Trev Alberts. And yesterday we heard Trev get his extension, BC, and not only just for that hire, but Trev's done some pretty good things in his short stint at Nebraska so far, volleyball day being included, keeping Hoiberg on staff and expressing change and that happening too. Just how deserving is it, 1, for him to get that extension, and 2, how important is it to lock down somebody that has a good grasp on the athletic department and just like a smart person in that role, because, some athletic departments out there aren't run very smoothly or properly, but Trev seems like somebody that has been able to do that at Nebraska.
I think the biggest thing with that right now is I sense Trev Alberts has a strong ability to connect with his peers and the higher level people in the league. And that means everything right now. This is an unstable time in college athletics, and you need a leader who understands that, who understands the stakes of what's going on, and establishing your brand right now as one of those 50 to 50. If this is going to break off, like some people think it's going to at whatever point, and it's going to be like those, basically your Premier League type teams and your teams that aren't, your 50 teams that are and the others that aren't. Nebraska's got to make sure they're on the right side of that. And so I think it is important to have that person who understands what's at play. He's spoken publicly about that. He knows the moment that Nebraska's in. He knows they've got to win football games here more and more. But he also knows, like, the volleyball day in Nebraska was a cool event around here, obviously, where people are going to remember that for a long time. But he knows what that meant as far as branding too. Like, it says to everybody else, like, look at what they're doing at Nebraska. They take chances. They're innovative. They do stuff outside the box, and they think big like that. And he knows that stuff matters. So I think the fact that he's ambitious like that and he connects with his peers in this time is very critical. And the biggest thing will be if that football program and the coach he hired can win some more games, and also the stadium project. I mean, that is a project of all projects that most, ADs would never attempt. And a lot's going to come back to how that comes together and if it works, and if it, 10 to 15 years from now, we're like, man, that's a special place over there.
BC, we've got about a minute left here. For all the positive things that we mentioned about what Trev has done and the projects he's working on and stuff like that, I mean, if we're being totally honest, we're going to judge this extension 3 years from now on how many wins the football team has, right? Like, that's it.
I think it's a top one. Yes. Because if football's like 8+ consistently a few years from now, 8 wins, and you're like, then they're thinking about 10 wins some seasons and better than that, then yeah, everything will be fine with the branding, because that's the biggest part of branding in college athletics. I mean, it's the thing that everybody across the country pays attention to. Like, a person in Boise, Idaho, is aware of like who's ranked where, and a person over in this part of the country knows what's going on and who's up and who's down in college football. So yeah, that's the biggest one. The stadium project is, I think, close, and the connection with peers is important. But yes, football has to rise up, and everything else, I think, can fall into place with it.
Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7 BC. We'll talk to you again next week.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, BC.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our friend Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. See what we can find out about what's going on in the capital city here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We are halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on H&H Chevrolet stage. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities, and we're brought to you by our friends over at the Warhorse Sportsbook. Warhorse Sportsbook is the best place in Nebraska to go place your sports bets. You can do it in Lincoln or in Omaha now at Horstman's Park. That's 6303 Q Street. Make sure you go check them out. You can place bets on nearly every major sporting event. Whatever kind of bet you want to play, straight bets, parlays, props, live in-game bets. Check out warhorsecasino.com/sportsbook or go to the Warhorse Casino app for details and the full list of house rules. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Joining us on that Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is our friend Kevin Sjuts from 1011 News in Lincoln. Kevin, how you doing this morning?
Doing well. Good morning to you, boys.
What's up?
Kevin.
Living the dream, right? The non-bowl eligible quite yet dream.
I mean, that
I can't
feels
believe that's a real dream.
a little bit like a nightmare, if I'm being honest, Kevin. You know, I as we get closer and closer to the end of the season and fewer opportunities to earn that eligibility, I know I'm starting to tense up a little bit. How do you feel about their chances in one of these last two games to get that 6th win?
Don't you guys feel like, the window is still open, but it's close to being closed just because of who's left? If we can if you look at the 4-game stretch that they had to try to get that 6th win, you would have thought for sure it's Michigan State or Maryland to get it done. Going to Madison and trying to win at a place that you haven't is going to be really challenging. And, man, if it comes down to Black Friday against Iowa, that game already is kind of layered up with some extra incentives. And Iowa's pretty good this year. So if it comes down to that for Nebraska, that's going to be a pretty pressure-packed moment. And I don't know that this team has played with a whole lot of pressure so far this year.
Yeah,
Kevin,
good thought.
Is Iowa the worst good football team you've ever seen?
That's a pretty good way to describe it. They've got good special teams and they've got really good defense, but their offense is not very good. That's a good point, Robin. Yeah, they're the worst good football team I've seen.
I mean, somehow they're sitting with the way because we've seen a sort of version of that here in Nebraska, right? Where the defense is really good. Obviously, Iowa's special teams has been better than Nebraska, but Nebraska's sitting here at 5-5 fighting for bowl eligibility. And Iowa's probably, they're 8-2. Chances are they're going to be 10-2, 9-3, worst case scenario, and playing for a Big Ten title, which I don't think is going to go well, but they're in a dramatically different spot than Nebraska with not that dramatically different of a season.
Yeah, and I think that they just always play to who they are. And, it's been kind of the Kirk Ferentz way for many years that, it's never sexy, it's never flashy, but somehow the wins are there. I have a friend who lives in Iowa, used to live here in Lincoln. So he follows the Hawks a little bit, not a huge fan. He's more of a Nebraska fan than Iowa fan. And I asked him, following the game on Saturday, so what's going to happen with this Nebraska-Iowa game? And he goes, if I'm Iowa, I just punt the ball the second I get it and then just put the defense out there and wait for Nebraska to give you points.
Mm-hmm. So the water boy offense is what you mean.
Exactly right, yeah. I kind of want to watch that happen because it would be so fascinating and a unique way to watch a football game.
Just hopefully Bobby Boucher doesn't show up at halftime. Now, as we approach this Wisconsin game, Kevin, one thing I kind of took away from the players yesterday was how visibly noticeable it was that they didn't need any extra motivation other than knowing that, hey, 9 straight losses dating back to 2012, 1 win in Madison and 7 tries all time and none since 1966 to be fired up for this matchup.
Yeah, this staff, they're going to do whatever they can to motivate the guys. And as much as, that staff says, well, what's in the past is in the past, and we're not really worried about it too much, they will use those statistical factors just to try to make sure that this team, has a little bit of an edge to them. So I'm not surprised by it because, this is the mental challenge of trying to get your team up for a game where, let's be honest, Nebraska, the mentality within the locker room has to be different now than it was 2 weeks ago because there was the energy with the winning streak and on the brink of bowl eligibility. So you need to try to put the carrot in front of the players right now and get them chasing after something because, it's just different. You approach a game differently now. And I have to believe that some of the confidence that Nebraska was playing with in October, it has totally changed because of the way these last 2 games have played out.
Kevin, speaking of confidence, I have such a hard time separating sometimes the way fans think, the way players think, the way coaches think, because I think on some level, there's a kind of a base human nature to the way everybody processes some of these things. And when I look at the quarterback position, I have to imagine that's one of the things that's eroded some of the confidence in the rest of the team, right? It would be almost impossible not to.
Put yourself in the shoes of Isaac Gifford and Ty Robinson and Luke Reimer. Sudden change is always hard because, you're on the sidelines, you're going through, whatever information that your coordinator is giving you and your position coach. And then all of a sudden you got to stop that conversation abruptly and you got to race on the field and reset the mind. They're not just doing that once or twice a game. They're doing it 5 or 6 times a game. That's tough. Not to mention the fatigue factor. And so as much as we like to praise this defense for, what they're doing schematically and making plays and the takeaways are kind of here and there. I think one overlooked part of the whole piece with the defense is they're not wearing down. They're playing pretty well late in games when you got to consider they're on the field a lot. And when they go on the field, sometimes it is at a moment's notice. It's not after a kickoff or we just threw a pick, got to go. That's tough. And so for them to have some mental endurance and physical endurance, that's really impressed me so far this season.
Kevin, I kind of want to change gears here to Nebraska basketball, if we could. Well, for one, you're an AP top 25 voter. You're a Heisman voter, too. I don't know how you got both of those accolades. I bet you even have a say on who gets season tickets for Husker softball this year and who doesn't. But if we could stick with Nebraska basketball, what game on the calendar are you most looking forward to that will be your deciding vote on a team or not? Take everything into account, like not just a top team on their schedule or in the Big Ten, but the point in the season when they win that game, if and assuming they're healthy, and all the other potential unknowns, but make them knowns for this scenario.
All right, well, I'll give you the layup answer here and say that's Creighton. Can they be competitive? I don't think Nebraska needs to beat Creighton because I think the Blue Jays are really good. And last night's game was certainly a lot of fun. But if you look at Nebraska, I think Creighton is just a nice barometer because you know that the Jays are pretty good. I would even say the game up in Sioux Falls against Oregon State, because you're going against a Power 5 team for the first time, and that's a week from Saturday, so it's coming up soon. I just want to see these guys with a little tougher competition. Those are two non-con games I would give you. And then, in December, Nebraska plays a pair of pretty good conference teams. Michigan State, I know, comes to Lincoln. I believe that game is the second week of December. I think that'll be a pretty good test for how Nebraska is going to shape up this year. They're good. I like some of the pieces they have. I think they're going to get better with Jawan Gary in the lineup, and it sounds like that will happen tonight. So with Fred and this staff, they're still figuring out combinations. They're not fully healthy. So I would hope that by the time the Creighton game rolls around and by the time that Michigan State game rolls around, you're more at 100%, and you can really identify who's going to play well together and who you're going to put on the floor at the same time.
Kevin, I know he's only played one game so far for Nebraska basketball this season, but do you have any level of concern that maybe Keisei Tominaga isn't able to consistently provide the level of production that this team is going to need from him, considering like last year, it was fairly uneven until the last 9 or 10 games of the season where he really started to emerge?
Yeah, if you're a fan and you're wondering, Keisei starts the game the other night. He made his first 3, but missed like the next 7 or 8. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Of course, there's going to be some nerves. There's going to be a little bit of rust getting back on the floor with these guys. And remember, their team chemistry is still being built with this squad. I think that Keisei is going to be just fine. But Keisei played on Monday night just like Keisei did in terms of if he's open, he's going to let it fly. And I got to figure the overall body of work with them will fall. It may be a little inconsistent at times, but they're going to be nice when he pops off and goes for 20+.
Kevin, you sound like a Creighton fan there with that let it fly, but we'll let it slide on you this time. Kevin, we appreciate your time as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, do well, guys.
Thanks, Kevin.
That's our guy, Kevin Sjuts. Apologize for a little coughing fit I had
just
a second ago. I am sorry. It didn't feel good.
I cough all the time. People cough, Robbie. It's
People
okay.
do cough. Coming up next, we'll wrap up hour number 2 on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
It will be, I guess, a little bit of a challenge just from a time standpoint, but I think we'll get ahead a little bit this week. And by the time we get back Saturday night and get in the office on Sunday, we'll put this game away and get started on our next opponent. And it will be a little bit quicker. And then with the holiday, you kind of lose half a day there, which is good, getting to go home and do Thanksgiving. But we'll figure it out. We've been doing it for 20-something years now, so we'll figure it out.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I thought for a second there I might have a personal injury while I was having my coughing fit there, but I didn't. I recovered. If I did, though, I'd have called my friends over at Dyer Law.
Do you think they'd help you?
I don't know, but they can advise me. They have a phone number you can call, 402-393-7529, or you can chat with trusted professionals at Dyer.law. Maybe it's not something that I need a lawyer for, but they can lend you a helping hand no matter what you're going through, and you can figure out what is next and what you need to do. That's visit dyer.law or call 402-393-7529 if you're dealing with a personal injury accident of any kind.
You may have thought to call them. I thought I was about to get an invitation to Thanksgiving with Satterfield.
I know.
I was getting excited over here.
You were a Doc Sadler. You excited?
I was excited.
It's exciting. We've talked about this. I have such a hard time. figuring out how much of this is Satterfield's fault? How much of it is the injuries? How much of it it's not the offense that he wants to run? How much of it is Chubba Purdy didn't get nearly the reps you would have liked to have seen this week? And it all kind of came to there was that one play, the 3rd and 7 we were talking, or the 3rd and goal from the 7 that we were talking to BC about. And that kind of felt like a microcosm of the entire offense, right? Because you've got a 3rd-string quarterback. That's a microcosm of the injuries. You've got a freshman wide receiver and a walk-on wide receiver in Coleman and Bullock trying to run their routes to the inside. That's kind of a microcosm of not only the, injuries, we've got to go young talent, but also these guys that have worked their way into spots like Alex Bullock where, he was maybe an afterthought or forgotten on previous staffs. And then you've got Billy Kemp, I believe, not running his route correctly. Or precisely enough, which is the lack of execution we've seen on offense.
That would be a good guess after hearing how they described where the ball was supposed to be thrown.
They're talking about a corner route. That dude was at the goal line, right? Like he was basically directly in front of the goal line.
And now sometimes your routes take you there because of the way you're being defended.
Yes, but if you're Billy Kemp, you have to find a way to get to the corner rather than kind of cutting that thing off. And so here's what I think happened. We talked about this pretty in depth after the show yesterday. And so I wanted to get into it so you had a chance and I had a chance to kind of walk through the process of what we think happened there. First of all, I think because of, and you brought this up, because of the lack of reps that Chubba Purdy had gotten and because of the lack of execution from the other quarterbacks, I think he was told, hey, this ball needs to go to Billy Kemp. I think it was a one-read play in terms of, hey, Billy Kemp's going to the corner, you either throw, and kind of the way Rule has talked about it too, it's either an incompletion or it's a touchdown, and we kick a field goal for the incompletion, right? I believe he was told, hey, this ball needs to go to Billy Kemp. It's either going to be a touchdown or it's going to be a incompletion, and then we're going to score points and take the lead. So that's, I think, is the first thing to keep in mind here.
Is 3rd and goal. You don't need to make it complicated. Just go one way.
I think it was a one-read route to Billy Kemp. Now, here's where it got in trouble. As we said, Billy Kemp didn't run a corner. He kind of ran just a little out at the goal line. And because Purdy didn't have the reps, because the route wasn't run the way he was supposed to, because Purdy was told, hey, this ball, we think, right? This ball needs to go to Billy Kemp. Even when Billy Kemp didn't run the route to the right spot, he still threw it to Billy Kemp. That's where the problem started to arise, right? With the other variables in this play. I mentioned Malachi Coleman. Didn't clear his man out of that area fast enough. He got kind of jammed up at the line of scrimmage. He's a freshman, probably doesn't totally know how to disengage and get through that as quickly as he needs to allow that throw. Now, again, if Billy Kemp runs to the corner instead of the goal line, you're probably okay. But with those two things combined, you had a problem. And you combine those two things with Purdy not having enough reps, with it being, I believe, a one-read route, and Purdy having just had the play earlier where he ad-libbed and he wasn't supposed to. He stuck to his guns. He's like, okay, this ball's going to Billy Kemp. And all of a sudden you have this
cluster
conglomerate of bad things that just happened that lead to a goal line interception. I think that's what happened. And it kind of goes to show you how complicated some of these things are. But I also think it goes to show you, hey, these quarterbacks now, Purdy, because he hasn't gotten a ton of reps, is a little bit different. But these quarterbacks haven't gotten obviously comfortable with the system enough to understand, like, oh, hey, Billy didn't run where he was supposed to. I'm throwing it out of the corner of the end zone anyway and chalk it up to miscommunication and leave it alone, go kick the field goal. Like, that's a veteran move, is to say, hey, I'm not still throwing it to Billy Kemp when it's not there anymore. You still got freshman wide receivers. If Malachi Coleman's a junior, he probably figures out a way to make sure his guy gets clear of that ball or clear of that area before that ball's thrown. There's so many factors here that, yeah, some of them are going to be errors on the player, but I think some of it is what's being taught or what's being allowed in practice. And that, to me, is what needs cleaned up on the offense as much as anything.
It's cut and dry to me. Everything is wrong with the offense. And it doesn't just start with quarterbacks. It doesn't just start with Satterfield. It starts with everybody. And the Huskers are 0-3 in 23 when scoring 10 or fewer points. They're 1-5 when scoring 17 points. Like that's a problem. You have to find a way to get above that 17-point threshold, or you have to stop forcing shots in an effort to play to win versus playing for points. And that's kind of what I brought up with BC. Taking the points has to be front of mind for this team. But going into that third down play just a little bit more, maybe one extra point to bring up, because I do believe that it was, hey, throw this to Billy. If we don't get it to Billy, it's fine. We'll take 3 from Tristan. We put our defense back on the field. We have a lead. Maybe then Maryland plays their final drive differently because they're from behind versus, tie ball game.
And there would have been less time on the clock.
And there would be less time for sure. One other point that I think needs to be brought up too is I don't know if because when Malachi heard that, hey, this ball was going to Billy, it wasn't just a route clearing thing for me. It was I can't touch this football thing.
Sure.
Because there are times when you're a freshman and you're matched up with a senior, right? And if the senior has the so-called, and I'm going to, put the spin off the senior word, seniority. In that moment, they're saying, hey, the ball's going to Billy. Billy's catching this football. As a freshman, you're like, okay, my job is to not catch the football. Right? My job is to do X, Y, and Z right. But I think that's wrong. Everybody knew, yes, it was going to Billy, but you also have to have like a second nature gene inside of you to catch any ball that's thrown your way. I used to say it all the time, and I say it a lot with my baseball players too. If a ball is hit in the air, you are acting like you're the only person that can catch this ball right now.
Yeah.
You're calling for the ball, and then we'll decide, right, who actually has the so-called dominance over that play. If it's an infield, if it's a fly ball in the infield and the shortstop calls you off, like, yeah, that's a shortstop ball. But everybody is thinking, no matter what, that they can catch this ball. Same thing in center field. I'm thinking that I'm going to catch every ball. And that's what these receivers need to be thinking about no matter what. If you watch the playback, you see Coleman kind of throw his hands back because he knows I have to let this ball go to Billy. Even though it was a catchable ball, so it seemed based on the film.
Yeah, even if
Malachi,
it wasn't intended for him.
Right.
If he does catch it, it's probably a touchdown.
It's 6 points. Yeah. It's 6 points. So based on that mistake, you have to be ready to catch the football, right? Even you may not even be the first option, right? But always you're looking around and you're thinking this football is getting thrown to me. That's what has to be instilled in brains. And that's why I wondered if everybody across the board knew it was only going to Billy and Billy only.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was like, oh, I got to just let it go to Billy. But that can't be where we rest with this.
Right.
Everybody at any point in the game has to expect the football. They have to. And if the football's thrown in their general direction, you go and try to catch it.
Yeah, you got to make a play.
Even if you dive and you knock it down and you make the mistake, well, guess what? It's an incomplete pass. You take the points anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, again, it's a combination of, I think they were trying to simplify it for a quarterback that didn't have a ton of reps. I think it's a freshman wide receiver who hasn't been in that position very many times before, if at all. If I'm don't have every play memorized from this season, but hasn't been in that position very much hasn't really been in any position very much as a college wide receiver at this point in Malachi Coleman. And again, you've got both the inexperience from both of those guys and the actual errors on the play as well. That's where it became instead of a harmless incompletion or a touchdown, that's where it became an interception. And is that on the play calling? I mean, not necessarily, but I'll go back to this 100 times over again. Calling a running play isn't conceding. Nebraska was running the ball really well. I believe they were at pretty close to 6 yards per carry on the final drive. They were gashing people on that final drive. That's a very viable option from 7 yards out. Or I'll say this until the day I die. I will die on this hill. QB rollout, simplify the field, make it easier to see what's happening because it's right in front of you and there's fewer bodies. Inexperienced quarterbacks need QB rollout. It helps them be better. This is not rocket science, and we don't see it from Nebraska. It drives me a little bit crazy. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our friend Avarie Howard from Hurrdat Sports as we wrap up the last hour of the show on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
No tough setbacks. I mean, we just say those are chances we get to play. I mean, when that ball's kicked off, you got 60 minutes to go play, right? So they work all year and they work all week. They take all these reps during the week. They get hit and all this stuff, lift all these weights. They got 50, 60, 70 plays in the game that they're going to get a chance to play, right? Of those 50, 60, 70 plays, We rotate guys. So you're talking about 35 to 40 chances you get to go out there and lay it on the line. So the defense plays their best ball when they get a chance to go play, and the cool thing is when you watch them run out of there, when those things happen, it's just like we said, hey, we get to go play. And that's the neat thing about it. That's the attitude we're talking about. It's like, it does not matter. It does not matter. We get a chance to go play ball. Let's go play ball.
Let's go play ball indeed. Coach White, let's keep playing ball at Nebraska, though. You don't need to worry about any of those California.
Don't go anywhere else.
Any of those California jobs are opening up. I wouldn't worry about those. We're back for hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Ravi Lulla here, Andrew Rogers, Avarie Howard joining us as well. We've got you covered on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for this final hour, KFOR in Lincoln. Avarie, how are we this morning?
I'm good.
Hey there.
Hey. I'm connecting. Sorry.
I thought maybe you were going to no-show on us. I'm going to be honest. All right.
No, I was actually going to be really good on time and couldn't get out of my own driveway. So people were moving in, had their moving truck right behind me. Yeah.
That's tough.
Was it like open? Like the door in the back was open. They were loading things.
Well,
so they had to like clean that part up before they moved the truck.
No, I actually think it was they parked it to go like figure out where the location was because I saw them leave the truck and I was like, no. Come back. But they just moved it over enough that it was like one of those angled situations that, you had to like, yeah. But
didn't make you happy.
No, it wasn't great. I was like, shoot, they can't make fun of me today. I'm going to be on time. No.
Yeah, Shane took the under, or at least he was praying for the under, and the over was a heavy favorite.
Oh,
you know what? I'll take it. You know what's funny is I'm usually like I'm always on time because like I have like the.
Are you on time like Lambo on time, 15 minutes early, or are you on time? I
usually like to be like ahead of schedule on time. Like I think it's like the college athlete PTSD I have a little bit. But. Yeah, this is the one thing that I don't know. You guys get me.
We obviously aren't that important.
Yeah, I guess
that's what we're hearing.
We didn't get high on the priority list here. I see how it is. No, it's all good. We've been talking about obviously the quarterback situation a lot, about Satterfield and the offense and all this stuff. I'm curious, because I've asked everybody this week basically. If you had to say today, who do you think ends up being your starting quarterback on Saturday?
I kind of think it'll be Chubba.
That's kind of what I think, too. I'm getting a lot of Sims, and I don't know how I feel about it.
We're getting Sims because Sims is labeled healthy.
Yes.
That's why Sims' name is number 1 in most people's minds.
Yeah.
But based on the burst of energy Chubba brought on that last drive, it's easier for people to lean Chubba, because we all know what we get out of Jeff Sims, but there's an unknown about Chubba that's a little more exciting than the known of Jeff Sims.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a morale thing more than anything. I don't know. I mean, Avarie, I don't know if you've been in this position, and I'm not going to ask you to throw any of your teammates under the bus here, but, I don't know if you've been in a position where when a certain person, player, teammate, whatever comes on the field, whether you're a fan, coach, player, whatever, and you say, yeah, I don't feel good about this situation because there's a history of them either making mistakes or kind of leaving teammates hanging out to dry by not covering their assignments or whatever. I think we've all been there at some point or another, and I can't help but think that's got to be creeping into Nebraska's mindset a little bit with Jeff Sims, no matter how much they like the guy as a person. I mean, I think he's at 70 plays and 10 turnovers on the season. So at a certain, it's not good. That's actually really bad. So at a certain point, you kind of have to be like, hey, we know you're going to turn it over. We don't necessarily want you out here. Like, does that make any sense?
No, it does. I genuinely feel bad for the guy. Like, I feel really bad for him just because you come in this year and you have high hopes. The Minnesota game was a flash of good, despite the turnover situation, but it was like, okay, there were some promising pieces there. And then you have the Colorado situation where it's maybe one of the bigger games he's been thrown into in a long time. Like I know Georgia Tech has a lot of big games week after week, but this is a game that's like a long-standing rivalry between Nebraska and Colorado. There was so much hype around it. When's the last time Colorado's been this hyped up going into a season? And then he kind of gets hurt, nicked up. And then not only are you battling I'm trying to get healthy, but I also kind of know this hometown kid is probably going to take my spot here and be a fan favorite after winning 2 games at home when he hadn't had 2 games to get under his belt to win at home. And then every single time he comes in, it's thrown into a crap situation. He's already probably mentally trying to figure out what the last time it was when he stepped on a live football field in a situation. I don't know, just watching him after the second turnover last weekend, he just went over to the medical tent, kind of hit himself behind the corner. I watched him get on a knee, take a few deep breaths. I don't know if he was talking to someone or something, but he had a few moments of conversation by himself. And I watched him. The fans booed him at one point pretty quickly. And as he went, they jogged off the field. And I just can't imagine like what that's like to be in a new environment. Everyone loves the hometown kid. Heinrich's made his fair share of the same amount of mistakes that Jeff's made, but they're going to cheer their heads off for him when he gets called in the starting lineup, right? And so I understand why people aren't Jeff Sims like fans. But then he shook it off. I watched him go like try to get his teammates a little rally. Hey, that's on me. I'm sorry. Like let's whatever. I just think the situation's tough and it's your first year here. So I mean, yeah, unfortunately the feelings are probably pretty negative towards Jeff right now, but I do genuinely have a really soft spot in my heart for him and just wishing the situation would have started a little bit different.
Some of that stuff I completely agree with. Some other things though, just to base off of points, like we'll start with the cheering thing with Heinrich.
I think the cheering is over for Heinrich.
Well, I don't know if it was ever like, so-called like, oh my gosh, it's Heinrich, like we're going to win this football game. I think it was more like, thank goodness he's the best of the bunch.
Right.
Right. And so they're cheering because it's just like, oh, thank goodness it's him and not somebody. But it's not like, oh my gosh, it's JJ McCarthy getting, called his name.
No, it's not.
So that there's a little difference there. The stuff that you bring up though, with like the mental side that Jeff has had to overcome is huge. And I would completely agree with that. But even early on in the season, after the Minnesota game, it wasn't the, oh my goodness, like we saw some good things from Jeff Sims. It was, gosh, this defense is good. True. And the defense just got the love right away and consistently has been the biggest piece of it all. But the Colorado game's a good example because of the hype that Dion brought in with it and the rivalry between Nebraska and Colorado, and it's just not going his way. And then Heinrich had some easier games. I think we can all admit that. He had some easier non-conference games that were better positions to be thrown into than what Jeff Sims has had.
And part of me wonders if Sims had been healthy. So he has the tough start, gets 0-2 with Minnesota and Colorado.
And that was my follow-up.
And then if he had been healthy for Louisiana Tech, Northern Illinois, is he able to get this thing back on track? I mean, he's got a pretty long track record of being at least a competent Division I Power 5 quarterback. And that's not what we've seen this year. I mean, he has not been a competent quarterback this year. Whether we like the guy or not, just from on the field, he hasn't. So, I wonder if he had gotten that chance to kind of get right in those two Group of 5 games, if he would have been able to turn it around. Now, obviously, we will never know. What we do know is after those 2 games, Heinrich turned it around the other direction and kind of turned into a Jeff Sims clone in terms of the turnovers that he was causing there. But it's just I do feel bad for Jeff Sims on a personal level, but on I don't want to say professional level, but I mean, let's be honest, college football at this level is pretty close to a professional sport. On a professional level, you just have to be like, hey, the guy's not getting it done.
Yeah.
Right?
And you also know this comes with it when you walk into being a starting quarterback. So I understand that part too. There's a comment in the section that I want to ask you guys now. Someone said he shows zero emotion when he continues to mess up. He has zero competitive spirit. And I'll be honest, I have a really tough time with that because I remember sitting in the stands I was in college, and I remember someone said that about Adrian behind me, Adrian Martinez. And someone said he just doesn't care. He just want to be out there. And because we see a calm, cool collectiveness of an athlete, does that determine that we think they don't care? And I'm going to make a baseball reference because my brothers are pitchers, but they can't show emotion on the mound after they just walked 3 guys.
Yeah, you don't want them to.
No, you can't. And you want them to be fired up. And to make a response, but you're the leader in that moment. The quarterback's the leader. When they start showing panic and this like there's a point that you have to stay pretty even keeled. I mean, we watched Talia Tagovailoa outwardly show a lot of emotion this past weekend, and it was criticized.
Yeah.
It was, oh no, Maryland might self implode here. Look at, they're pointing fingers and they're freaking out. So where do you draw the line, and where do you balance that? Because I feel like it's an interesting thing to say that someone doesn't show emotion and therefore they don't care.
Emotion's the wrong word.
Yeah.
Fear is probably the right word, because Jeff Sims shows fear when he's out there. And I think he is scared to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And that leads to hesitancy, and that leads to, other thing. And you can toss any word into the mix, but emotion isn't the right word, because you have to kind of stay blank. You don't want to like show too much color on your page. I brought it up during the World Series when Nathan Eovaldi walked 3 guys and it was the 4th inning and nobody out. He didn't show a lick of emotion, but he was able to get out of it. It's about how you turn a negative situation into a positive, but I just don't know if Jeff Sims has enough confidence in himself to do that right now. There's a separation between emotion and fear, and I think fear is the more appropriate word.
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of funny because this is a very results-based conversation, right?
Yeah.
When somebody doesn't show emotion and things aren't going well, then we say, oh, this guy doesn't care, he doesn't have competitive spirit. But then you have Joe Burrow, who maybe the thing that we like most about him is how cool and calm and collected he is.
Cool Joe.
And literally like sociopath levels of lack of emotion. And we're like, man, isn't it great? Nothing rattles this guy. And it's like, it's essential. And listen, I'm not even saying Jeff Sims is doing that, but it's essentially the same thing. It's just, hey, when things are going well, it's just seen as this huge positive. When things are going poorly, you can either say it as, oh, this guy doesn't care, or he loses his cool and loses his emotions. It's like, I don't really read too much into stuff like that, because Tim Tebow, super fiery quarterback, not exactly the guy you want running your NFL franchise. Great in college, sure, and it worked for that team, but there's a lot of things on that team that I don't want going on for Nebraska in terms of some of the people on that roster, right? So it's, I think, a very murky place to be, because I think it's so circumstantial based on what's happening and what the results end up being. So I don't really love getting into that part of it. I do. So I heard a rumor this week, just sticking on the quarterbacks, that
rumor has it.
I love a rumor. Coaching rumors, transfer rumors, they're my favorite. But I heard
a gossip guy.
In sports at least. I heard a rumor this week that Chubba was supposed to get surgery on that groin in season, maybe as soon as this week, and that has been postponed. It's a reasonably good source where I heard this from. I wouldn't say it's locks like 100% lock, but I feel pretty decent about it, enough to say it on the air. And now that he's not having that, it leads me to believe that two things are either true. They want him to play, or Harburg's injury is bad enough that they think they're going to need him at some point as the primary backup.
Because then if Jeff goes and Heinrich's out, now you're down to what, one guy?
You're down to Longvall or Jack Woche basically at that point if Chubba has the surgery.
Right.
So either, in my mind, that means either Harburg's injuries, probably, you only have 2 weeks left. That might be a season ender with a high ankle sprain, right? Like that's within the normal time frame.
It's 4 weeks is.
It sounds dramatic to say season ending, but just where we're at in the season, it could be.
Yeah.
So it's either, I think that, and maybe both are true, or they want to see Chubba in there as the starter the next couple games. Like that's, so I think it's a little interesting piece of information. I don't know how much it changes anything, but in my mind, I do think, I don't think we're seeing Harburg again this year.
Yeah.
Unless they get to a bowl game and it's a deeper bowl game.
Yeah, but I mean regular season. Yeah.
But still, if you get to a bowl game, do you want somebody that has been, sitting out for the last 4 or 5 weeks, or do you want somebody that's at least been getting the reps constantly?
And
that would be the question.
And let's say Chubba plays well in the last 2 games. You probably want to give him a month of practice or a couple weeks of practice, whatever their bowl game would land, and say, hey, let's see what this guy does with. That would be the first time in his career he would get an extended period of time as the guy getting number 1 reps. And I don't know that people always appreciate how useful that is in terms of getting a full off season or getting a full spring or even an extended period of time, like the end between a regular season and a bowl game, to be the guy and get that level of reps, I think is way more crucial in people's development than maybe we realize. So it'll be interesting to see. And you wonder, if they do make a bowl game, do they put off the surgery even more? Do they put off the...
Yeah, at some point you have to think about the athlete over the situation.
Yeah. And you have to also think about, okay, would you rather have him for a bowl game or would you rather make sure he's 100% healthy for winter conditioning and for the spring game if he's planning on coming back? Like you kind of start to have to weigh those things, but I think it's safe to say it's not happening until after Iowa.
Well, it's interesting, too. The Elliott Brown situation is what this makes me think of. Coach saying, like, no, you're not going to be on the sidelines, helping, coach your wire plays and things like that. It's going to be, you're going to get the surgery. So it's interesting to see kind of like the difference here by if going off of what Ravi was saying with his source, if that indeed comes out to be true and Chubb is a guy that needs surgery, knowing that the coaching staff is like okay with Chubb sticking around. I don't want to say that shows desperation, but it just shows that they're in need of him being there in that room and competitive and possibly starting from a week-to-week basis, or at least coming in. Like we heard Satterfield talk about, hey, we're going to use all three quarterbacks. Is that a recipe for success? Obviously not, but it's at least giving you options throughout the game if something were to go wrong, because we've seen over weeks and weeks ago, turnovers have been an issue. Reading and executing throws have been an issue. So if that's not happening and that's not going right, and say Chubba does, go get his surgery, all alluding to that fact, well, can you trust Luke Longvall to like step up and be like that next big thing, or somebody else younger in that room to step up and be what you could expect out of Chubba versus Sims if things went wrong? It's a tough situation for the staff to really be in.
I also think as a staff, it might be one of those surgeries that, hey, we were going to go through it this season, but it also could have happened after this season. I don't think they would do anything where it's like, well, this had happened in season. Now we're obviously going to.
Yeah, I don't think it's like detrimental.
So it was one of those, maybe a timing situation. It was going to be fine. Maybe Chubba just wasn't going to be necessarily be in the picture this year. Let's just get you on the health track and get you kind of jump started for whatever next season looks like. And because of circumstances, obviously, I think it's like one of those that, it doesn't have to happen right now. Let's give it 2 weeks and that's not going to make anything worse kind of situation. But I can't imagine the staff either would, make that personal decision for him.
Yeah. Well, and it goes kind of back to what we heard Rule say this week about Elijah Robinson, right? Like there's some coaches that are in it for themselves and there's some coaches that are in it for the players. And, I think I fully believe that Coach Rule is one of the guys that's in it for the player. So I don't think he would ever do anything that was actively detrimental to Chubba Purdy. But it's also one of those things that's like, well, okay, if he's not going to play, let's get the surgery done as soon as possible so that he's ready to go, whether he wants to, try and graduate and transfer or be around for spring and winter conditioning, whatever the case is there. But Avery, I'm curious how you're starting to feel about this Wisconsin game.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, even just a couple weeks ago, I looked at it as kind of this daunting task and going up to Madison and this team.
But Avery likes Madison.
Loves Madison. Loves East Lansing. Loves Madison. Loves all the opposing teams.
That's great. Thanks, Shane. Can I have that actually? Let me go. Yep. Good. Any more? Okay.
Do we have an East Lansing one in there too, Shane?
Can I get that? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. No. We're done. Yeah. What was I gonna say? See, this was me when I was making fun of you guys. The tone.
I don't think so.
The tone of my voice definitely changed.
No,
I love
voice.
Boulder. No, what I was saying was.
It's so great.
Okay.
So much nature.
What I was going to say was I like the opposing.
Pretty neat.
Okay.
All right, Madison.
I was going to say I like the opposing places we've traveled to.
Sure, yes. But in terms of the actual football team, not that long ago, I looked at this as a pretty daunting task.
Yep.
Now Wisconsin looks like they're in a similar place, maybe a worse place than
Yeah.
Nebraska at this point? How have you how have your feelings about this game changed as both Nebraska and Wisconsin's seasons have started to take on different tracks?
Yeah, well, we'll talk about this in our preview because when I was looking at the comparisons of the two teams, it's kind of like a little bit eerie, like how similar.
It's a Spider-Man meme.
Yeah, and it's weird because I think I say it's odd to see these two teams look as like side by side, just with the obvious, the two new head coaches, two head coaches that were highly regarded. You have two teams that are 5-5. The bowl game continues to linger over. You have backup quarterbacks at play here. I mean, I'm going to assume even if Jeff Sims playing, I'm going to have him considered a backup situation or an uncomfortable situation. You have Tanner Mordecai goes out earlier against Iowa. Now you've got a kid that's just trying to, step in. And then you have two teams that are on a 2+ losing streak. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting situation to see Nebraska play Wisconsin and not seem as, like you said, daunting. Yeah, but the thing that that continues to make me nervous is that it's a night game away on the road, and no matter, Wisconsin's a similar situation to Nebraska. Like, their fans are going to show up. They've got great traditions.
Madison gets a little crazy.
Yeah,
too.
It does. They got their old jump around situation, and they've got things that they do before the fourth quarter, like Nebraska does. Like, they've got their deep-rooted things. This isn't going to be a night game at Illinois or a night game somewhere else where it's fair weather. It'll still be intense. And I think the thing that's interesting too is, Luke Fickell last week said, something about this, the embarrassment. He put the embarrassment word out there. And I think that's clearly, I assume the first time his players heard him say that wasn't publicly. I assume that was probably spoken within the locker room first.
Hope so.
As a player, I would hope so. I assume, and I think Coach Fickell's a good enough coach that he knows what that word carries. That I think that might be something that, hey, we need to start looking in the mirror because that was embarrassing for Wisconsin. I assume that had something to do within the locker room before it was said publicly. That's an immediate challenge without challenging, right? Like, this players were like, crap, like, new head coach just said we were embarrassing. Like, that's, so they're going to play with some revenge. Nebraska's going to want to play with some revenge. So it's one of those, I've said it for like 5 weeks now. It's like, who's going to respond? Like, aside from the football, who's going to mentally show up and respond?
The other point to that too is the players reacting the same way in that embarrassment and speaking the embarrassment. So it wasn't just like, hey, I heard it from coach. No, I feel it too.
No, I feel it too.
Like, and good athletes recognize the fact that this isn't anything what we thought it was going to be leading up to this week. So revenge is the perfect word to use for that team because they'll have a little extra spark, a little extra motivation. It's a rivalry game. I know we talk about like rivalry games, like, throughout, but like, it seems like Nebraska has like 4 or 5 different rivals, literally, if you kind of like date it back. So the worry for me more is it seems like Wisconsin at least has the pieces to be successful. Like, they have a starting quarterback that is proven. They have a really good big named running back who hasn't shown enough this year, but has in the past. It's just a matter of if those pieces are enough, if that so-called talent is enough to give you the W. At this point, I'm not sure.
Well, let's see if Avarie's talent and Guess Who translates to a new game today. That's coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers, and Avery Howard here with me. We are brought to you by our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. They've been in business for over 25 years in Omaha, family-owned and operated local business. Voted first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running. They've got 4 great Omaha area locations, and they can work on any make and model that you've got. They've also got a terrific give back program. They give back to the community with every car repaired. Visit dingmans.com to find out more information, both about their give back program and about their products and services. That's our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. All right, it's time to play our game.
All right, you ready?
You want to go grab it?
Yeah, I'm gonna go get it.
We're
Shane, do you have like some like very like Spartan-like music from 300 whenever I walk back with
I'm
this?
scared, honestly.
Avery, we actually said it this morning. I don't think you were listening yet. You get to play Shane's World this week.
No. No.
We've got.
I don't have water.
We've got the. Don't worry, we're live from Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. They have water here.
I gotta go right now.
We can go get some. We'll get some water for you. Listen, maybe you'll have terrific luck like me and only get good jelly beans. Or maybe you'll be like Andrew and get a bad jelly bean every single time.
Yeah, that is me.
We never know
of the time. Yeah, well, Avery, we know how much you love the game. You said you used to play with your cousins all the time,
Yeah.
so that's why we're gonna play it.
It was so much fun. I said it has some of our best memories because it was so funny. I didn't say that I wanted to play
So
it.
we're just
You know
trying
what?
to help
I'm
you make
actually
more.
unprepared too. I was so excited not to like show off any of this that I don't have a spit cup ready. I don't have a cup of water ready.
Do
so-
you want to go run real quick? We can.
Yeah,
we
I
can
want water.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
guys do it.
All
This
right,
is great
so-
radio.
Are you gonna get me water? Can you please?
Get her some water, Andrew. Be a nice teammate.
I'm rewarding myself playing this game by. I'm gonna go to Starbucks after this.
While we're waiting for Andrew, I also want to tell you about our friends over at Big Brothers and Big Sisters. It is their mission to support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. You can go to mentoromaha.org to sign up to become a big, or if you're like me, maybe you don't want to hang out with kids that much, think they're a tough hang, you can go to mentoromaha.org, donate money, donate tickets to events. You can invite them to your business to kind of show them what you do, or you can sponsor or participate in upcoming events as well, so that people like Andrew and Avery who love kids can
What's
go
this for?
hang out and be a big. That is mentoromaha.org. Oh, I don't get it. Oh, there we go. I was like, you didn't give me a spit cup, Andrew? How dare you?
You know what, guys? I'm here for you.
You know what's a tough hang?
What's that?
Shane's World, party time, excellent.
Okay. So did you explain the game?
I haven't yet.
I've watched you guys.
Okay.
I've watched you guys.
So for the
play it.
people, we can do a quick recap here. We're going to name a category. Shane has to name as many things in that category in 10 seconds as possible. And we are going to bet on how many of those things he can name. The loser has to spin the jelly bean wheel and take their chances with either a delicious jelly bean or a less delicious jelly bean.
So since this is like a three-way game,
Yes.
are we going to make it 1v1 like we normally do, or are we
I
going to
think-
say like I say 3, Avery says 4, you can
Whoever's
say
the
5?
not closest.
Because it's an advantage for the person that goes first.
It is.
Because we all know Shane doesn't get more than like 5 normally.
That's interesting.
So I feel like we should team
shoot
up.
low.
Yeah, I feel like it should be like you against me, then
The winner
you
against Avery.
Yeah,
Okay.
or the loser against Avery. Like the loser stays. The
Okay.
winner gets a break.
Loser stays. Okay, so
The
And-
loser, the person that just ate the jelly bean, has to go
Has to go
again.
again.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
We play tough here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. All right, so Andrew and I will go first, so you get a little reprieve to start.
We'll start here.
You look like you've actively got anxiety here, Avery.
How many think you
Hold
I
on.
just know how
Shane can
long these stay in your mouth.
Well, that's you have to chew at least 3 times, and you can spit it out.
I'm gonna gag on camera.
Well, I do that every day, or at least every week.
Okay, what's the category again?
The top one here.
Well, I can't see it. Turn your computer.
You know it.
Okay,
I
yeah,
showed
yeah.
you earlier.
Listen, that's been like 2 hours. I can't remember.
Come on.
All right, I'm ready to go.
Do you want to go first? Or you want me to?
I think he can name 3.
Oh, he can easily name 4.
Oh, this is not good.
Party on, brother.
Let's go, Shane.
Party on.
Come on, baby. I got it pulled up.
I was
here,
like, pull
Robbie.
up a list,
I
'cause
got it
I-
pulled up right here.
I
I'm
don't know
good.
if I can name 4.
All right. I could have named 4. I couldn't name 5.
See, that's why like I couldn't go to 5. Like
Yeah,
100%
I could do 4.
could not have gone to 5.
Shane, are you ready?
Let's do it.
In 10 seconds, name as many Justice League superheroes as you can. Go.
Superman, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, The Flash.
That's it. He got 5.
Green
Robin
Arrow.
isn't a superhero, so I wasn't counting.
You said 3.
Black Arrow.
That a baby.
Holy
That
moly.
boy Shane.
So I got 8 out of in 10 seconds.
Did you get 8? I
I
stopped.
don't know.
After
You
I
got
heard
to
the
6
Flash.
and like 8, and I was like, all right.
Well, is Robin a superhero,
Yes.
or is he a sidekick?
He's part
Does
of
he
the.
count?
I mean, he got it.
He's
Anyway.
a
got-
part
he
of the
got-
Justice
yeah.
League, but is he a superhero?
He got it.
He got
anyway,
more
He got
So,
more, yeah.
yeah.
But I'm just curious.
Head cushion.
Come on, baby, get a bad one.
We have birthday cake or dirty
That
dishwasher.
is so
Dirty
come
dish
on,
water.
man.
Which one is it? It's like it's the white one with
This
sprinkles.
guy right here.
Yeah, here.
you go.
Yeah, you can touch my jelly bean.
Yeah,
It's
you're
okay.
welcome.
All right, here we go.
I
Ready?
washed my hands. Avery's already giving the face of
This
no
is,
return.
this is how I always get a good one. I can do a little.
Did you do the wrong sign up?
Always.
piece?
I always do.
Sign across.
All right, here we go. It's dishwater.
What does it taste like?
There's like a hint of sweetness to it, but then it goes bad a little bit. It's weird. Like it's almost like you stuck a cake in the dishwater. Oh, like it's a little sweet.
I just want to know, like, how do they make this crap?
I don't know, but
Like,
you guys are playing the next round. That's what I do know.
How do they curate this stuff? I've
Oh,
always
that one's
wondered.
lingering a little bit.
This one's going to be a fun one.
That one might be worse than dead.
What is it?
Show that to Avarie. Can you read that?
Oh.
Can you read that? So this is how many you think
don't say
Shane
it.
can
Don't
guess
say
in 10 seconds. Yeah.
Okay. Like,
Yeah, sorry, I could have blown it up.
It's okay. I can't read over there.
No,
How
you're
many
just gonna make
in
this-
10 seconds?
In 10
Yeah,
seconds,
10
how many
seconds.
can
How many
Shane
can he
name?
Oh, that was like lingering on the tongue a little bit.
That one's worse than dead fish for you?
Yeah, for sure.
What?
No.
Get out of here.
Okay.
I think I have more anxiety right now than Avery does.
I don't know.
But to be good.
She's like almost visibly shaking. She does not look happy about it.
Okay, how many can Shane get of that new prompt in 10 seconds? Avery, you go first.
7.
Go for it. Go
This
for it.
is easy.
That's high.
Easy
7 in 10 seconds, though?
Oh my goodness! And I'll explain why in a moment.
I
And
could name off in 5 seconds.
Well, it's Shane though, not you.
Shane, you're fine. I got faith in you, Shane.
She went 7 right off the bat.
I actually think that's a smart move.
Thanks.
I mean, there's no way I was going to go higher than 7.
I would have gone 8 for sure, and I think she would have came back with 9.
Not a chance.
Would you have gone 9?
Am I allowed to like rebuttal?
You can go as high as you want.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't
you go
know.
back and
I don't know if
forth.
I would do 9, but it would depend on what he says here.
Think about it. Like he would have got. I bet he gets 10 in 10 seconds.
Dude, there's no way.
What's your guess, Robbie?
5.
Okay.
Okay, here we go, Shane.
Faith.
You have to name.
I have faith, Shane.
7. Robbie, you ready with time?
Yep.
7 colors in 10 seconds. Go.
Black, blue, yellow, green, brown, gray, silver, red, white, orange.
All right, he got it.
How many was that in 10 seconds, guys?
12.
I think it was 10.
10.
So Avery doesn't get to count at all, ever. He got 37. It was unbelievable.
See, that was easy. That was doubting Shane. That was
I told you guys.
Listen, okay. There's a reason I doubt Shane, okay?
colors.
No, listen. Listen.
Mountain Dew
He was
I know the Mountain Dew story, but colors.
He didn't name the flavor of Mountain Dew he was currently drinking.
Well, sometimes it just
It
slips
was
your mind.
it was literally like right here. And he's like, Mountain Dew, Diet Mountain Dew. He only needed to name 3, and there was another variation in front of his face.
Shane, that was great. That
Shane,
was
I
a
believe
really
in you.
great
So
day.
that's why I have a little bit of doubt. That's all.
Spin that wheel.
Here we go.
Well, your doubt got
It
you
didn't
covered.
pay. It didn't pay off. We have. Oh no!
Uh-oh.
It's Peach or Barf.
Oh no, we haven't had this one
This
yet.
is the first Barf one.
All right. Well, you look for the right one because I don't want to. I don't want to.
I think it's this bright orange one, isn't it? It's or is it the bright orange one, or is it the like slightly
I think
less
it's this guy.
the like darker orange?
I think so.
Okay, let's give it a go. We've got 20 seconds
Let's
here.
give it a go. The duck said, "How about no?"
Here
Are
we
we
go.
sure that's it? It may be dead fish.
I don't know.
This is a great game.
You're enjoying yourself, huh?
What do you got over there?
No, I've got a lot of
You want me to
anxiety.
give it a go?
over
Yeah,
here.
go ahead and give it a go.
That's Barf. Yeah, that's bad. That's really bad. That's really bad. I think karma came to get me.
Oh my god!
I'm having a bad day, guys. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. We will be back.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers, and Avery Howard here with me. We are brought to you by our friends at Video Installation Center. They've been in business for over 25 years in Omaha, family-owned and operated local business. Voted first.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Just like I just said, they're big, physical, run to the football, play great team defense. They got two linebackers that fly sideline to sideline that are older guys that have played a lot of football. They've got 5 or 6 guys that play defensive line that look all the same. I mean, they're all just big, physical, just hard to move. Like, they get their feet in the ground, they're hard to move them. They got, 2 really good corners, one leading the league in interceptions, I believe. So you got to make sure you know where he is, and their scheme is very sound, and they make you have to play football and earn your yards and earn your points.
Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Still trying to get the taste of barf jelly bean out of my mouth. Appreciate Avery's mom calling me soft in the YouTube comments. Yeah, that's fair. But fair.
You were the one that had to try them both.
I did. Yeah, it was a bad week for me.
She's played the game before, so at least she knows. But
yeah, it was a bad week for me after having a really good run to start the season. I've hit some hard times.
Avery, do you feel on top of the world right now, knowing that you didn't have to?
Yeah, I'm
touch
chilling.
A jelly bean today.
I'm chilling over here.
Oh, we're playing.
I'm on top of the world any day. I don't have to touch these things.
We're playing again next week.
She's gonna go remote. You can't tell her that.
Just kidding. We'll never play again, Avery.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to get into some Big Ten West football specifically here with Avery as, we kind of start to wrap up the show here. I heard this done with NFL games on a podcast that I listened to, and I thought it was an interesting concept. So I wanted to bring it over here with the wild, wild Big Ten West, which is, I'm going to call it interesting. You know, you've got 5 teams at 5-5, all 3 and 4 in conference. And some people would call that a cluster of mediocrity. I call it interesting. We're going to stick with interesting.
Oh, is that what you call it? I thought you
Yes.
called it something different off
Well,
the air.
well, off the air, I call things a little bit different than on air. You can use other words. Like fun, super fun Big Ten West football.
Like Ricardo Kaká?
Great
He played soccer.
Great soccer player. Those Brazilians, so good. He was Brazilian, right?
I don't know.
I think he was. Avery, do you know?
I know he played for Real Madrid.
Kaká, was he a Brazilian?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, anyway, we'll say he's Brazilian. Anyway. Well, maybe.
He is.
So
Yeah,
there's
Brazil. He is Brazil.
Nailed
I saw
it.
it on a jersey.
Brazil.
Actually, but yeah. With an S.
There were a few games I wanted to get to with the Big Ten West or teams involving the Big Ten West at least. And I wanted your guys' opinion whether you thought it was a good win for the team that won or a bad loss for the team that lost, right? A lot of times we look at these things and be like, oh, that's a great win. But sometimes it's like, oh, they blew that one. I want to start with, I think, the one that Andrew and I differ on the most here, and that is Northwestern and Wisconsin. Andrew, is that a good win for Northwestern or a bad win for Wisconsin?
It is a bad loss for Wisconsin.
Bad loss, yes, bad loss.
And the reason it's a bad loss for Wisconsin is even though the program is in disarray right now, other programs are in disarray too. Let's slot in Nebraska into this conversation. And Nebraska found a way to beat Northwestern.
They did. Yeah.
So the fact that Wisconsin couldn't, and not only couldn't, but lost by 14, that's a bad loss for Wisconsin.
And we're down by 21 for most of the game.
Now, some would argue the other point of, well, Northwestern's playing good football, so or Northwestern isn't a good team, so beating Wisconsin's a good win for them. But actually, they are playing good football. There's a reason they're 5-5. So that's why I lean more on Wisconsin's a bad loss, or Wisconsin had a bad loss against Northwestern versus the latter.
So I think it's a good win for Northwestern because of what you said. This isn't a, like for instance, and we'll get to this one later, this isn't like a 3-7 Purdue team or a 2-7 Purdue team going into Minnesota, right? These teams were 5-4 and 4-5 going into this game. They were basically even. I understand that Wisconsin had higher expectations, but at this point in the season, this was a fairly even matchup, I thought. And I thought Northwestern came out, did what they needed to do, and took care of business at Wisconsin. And so for me, because Northwestern is having a solid season, it's less about Wisconsin blowing it and losing and more about Northwestern doing what they needed to do on the road to pick up a big win at Wisconsin. Avery, you kind of get the concept of the game?
Yeah, I gotcha.
You have any thoughts on Northwestern, Wisconsin? Or you want to move on?
No, I'm going to go with, I think it was a good win for Northwestern, just because when you look at the team stats, they're pretty equal across the board, but Northwestern found a way to rush on Wisconsin as well. And once again, kind of what you mentioned, like Wisconsin hasn't been able to find their rush game when you would think like that's kind of something that they should be leaning into just with having Braylon Allen in your backfield. But
who should be so much better.
Yeah, and has had great seasons. Yeah. But the reason I say that too is just the outside things that are happening in Northwestern's program, the head coach situation. I think for this team to rally the way they have the latter portion of the season and just go up against a Big Ten, pretty daunting opponent usually, and to be able to slam the door the way they did and be up for that much of the game. I mean, when you look at just like little stats, like first downs and third down efficiency and penalties, like almost identical, but they didn't fumble the ball. They didn't turn it over where Wisconsin did. So they took advantage of that. So I think it's a good win on Northwestern's part. So, I mean, obviously not the greatest performance ever for Wisconsin, but Northwestern also found a way to manufacture points. It wasn't a 7-3 game situation.
So this one I think is a little bit interesting because I really don't know where you guys are going to land on this one. And this only involves one Big Ten West team, but Illinois getting that 48-45 overtime win against Indiana. Illinois came into the game 4-5. Indiana came into the game at 3-6. So only a 1-game separator there coming in as well. Indiana obviously has struggled, but it's not like Illinois lit the world on fire this year either. I thought this was a good win for Illinois, mostly because where Illinois is at as a program, I think they're all good wins this year. I don't think they're playing great football. They had a backup quarterback throw for 507 yards in that game, 4 touchdowns, just 1 pick. dear God, I wish any of our quarterbacks could do that over the course of like a month, much less a game. But I thought this was a great win for Illinois, being able to get themselves within a game of bowl eligibility. I can't remember the last time they made back-to-back bowls, but I think it was the 80s. It was a very long time ago. Every time they've had success, or maybe it's 3 bowls in a row, but every time they've had success, they have a really hard time replicating that success. Obviously, they were better than expected last year. Be interesting to see if they're able to get bowl eligible again this year. But I think this is a good win for Illinois.
It's a good win for about all the same reasons, right? I remember we had a conversation with one of the Illinois insiders coming into the year, and
Robert Rosenthal.
His concern was Illinois doesn't put together back-to-back good seasons. When they have a really good football season, they make a bowl game, it doesn't happen the next year. In history, for a multitude of examples, could show that. So the reason it's a good win is because it got them to 5-5. Indiana's not a good football team. They aren't in bowl contention. So there's nothing really about them losing that game that would consider this a bad loss for that team, because they're already in the dumps.
Yeah.
It would have been a bad loss for Illinois and instead of a good win for Illinois.
Yeah.
So really this all falls on Illinois because they're 5-5 and they're still in bowl position and in bowl conversation too. And if Illinois wins this week, which is against Iowa, right? If I'm correct, they play Iowa this week, and Nebraska finds a way to win, guys, you're looking at the Big Ten West title contender.
Yeah.
In that Nebraska Iowa game.
Yeah.
Whoever wins that game will go to face Michigan or Ohio State. So there's impact for this Illinois team to have on the greater scale of what's to come.
Yeah, the last time they went, it was 90, 91, 92 is what I think.
When they went 3 straight, and they've only gone to 2 straight once since 92.
Yeah.
So this is not a team that deals with success very well. So it would legitimately be a pretty big deal for them to get to back-to-back bowl games here in years 2 and 3 under Brett Bielema. And Illinois actually still in the hunt for the Big Ten West as well, as everybody except for Purdue is technically. So this is, they still have stuff they're playing for besides just a bowl game, same way that Nebraska does as well. Last one I think I wanted to get to here, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, everybody here thinks the Nebraska game was a bad loss, not a good win.
Correct.
Bad loss for Nebraska.
Yes, bad loss for Nebraska because of the situation they were in late in that game.
Yes. Yeah, and the 5 turnovers and just how it played out.
Bad loss.
Bad loss for Nebraska. The one that I mentioned earlier that I think is interesting is that Purdue and Minnesota game. Purdue was 2-7 coming into this game. Minnesota 5-4. Minnesota theoretically with a win and a game that was winnable for them could have kind of taken a step forward in having a chance for that Big Ten West. I thought this was a terrible loss for Minnesota.
Yeah.
They had to come away with this win, and now they're in a position where their bowl eligibility is in question because they still have Ohio State coming up this week, and then they finish with Wisconsin, which is not a gimme. All of a sudden, this team that had a pretty decent shot at winning the West could end up not being bowl eligible. I thought this was a terrible loss for Minnesota.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good loss for them for sure. Yeah, definitely not. Which it still it makes me wonder. This is a different point, but makes me wonder what would happen if Minnesota was on the schedule like week 4.
Yeah, if they played Nebraska later in the season.
That's actually the biggest critique that Nebraska has gotten over the course of the years, because they play a top Big Ten West opponent early in the year, like to start the year, versus going with maybe a smaller non-con team to kind of build up on your season.
Well, and I think that was a Big Ten edict that set that one down.
I know. Just when you see like these kind of games, it's like,
yeah, you see it on the schedule, and but on the other hand, would much rather play Wisconsin now than I would have
agree.
earlier in the season. Frankly, I would have rather to play Maryland when we did. Than early in the year, and it still didn't work out.
Agree. Like there's 4, 5, and 5 Big Ten teams right now.
Yeah,
5.
Well, in the Big Ten West alone, there's 5.
It's pretty crazy. I think this is a good win for Purdue.
Wild, Wild West.
You think so?
Over a bad loss for Minnesota. I think even though they're not in bowl contention this year, a win like this for Ryan Walters in his first year just shows where the program is going and can go. Hudson Card had a really good performance. Devin Maccabee played really well in this game. The one I want to focus on more is Card because he'll return.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He'll be the quarterback
And they
there
need
next
him
year.
to
And
improve.
if they can kind of like build off of this
Yep.
down the stretch of this season into next, that's why I consider this actually a bigger win for Purdue versus a bad loss for Minnesota.
That's all we have for today on Wednesday on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We will be back tomorrow.
Thanks, Avery.
Lucky you didn't have to have any jelly beans today.
Sure am.